Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Swamp Lord, I have an intelligence system. Chapter 61. Lear took a deep breath, turned to look at the army beside him, and spoke in a low tone. The gods worshipped by the half-murlocs have revived. The enemy we are facing this time is God. These words made the wetland lizard warrior suddenly quiet. Resurrection of the gods. No matter how cruel a being is, they still have a deep soul reverence for the gods. That is the controller of this world, the supreme being above all living beings. But in an instant, these warriors returned to normal, and their amber eyes looked at Lear firmly. Waiting for their master's orders. What about God? As long as the master needs it, they dare to draw their swords. The will of the Lord is above all else. Feeling the change in the eyes of the wetland lizard warrior, Lear felt a little pleased. This is due to race. If it is a timid race like the Mire people, even if their loyalty to him will not waver, they will still be timid and shrink when facing the gods. How much fighting power you can burst out depends on your fate. Lear glanced around, a hint of madness in his voice. I have the means to kill the half-murloc god, and I will take you with me today to kill the god. The calm tone was like a mountain collapsing into the sea, causing huge waves. The eyes of all the soldiers were hot and their hearts were surging. Kill the god. These two words are full of taboos, but also carry endless temptation. Even in various myths and legends, killing gods is regarded as the most heroic feat and the ultimate taboo. Lear looked at the warrior whose momentum was soaring and waved his hand suddenly. Walk. The army immediately followed him. Under the guidance of two confused half-murlocs, they quickly approached the gathering place of half-murlocs. A few kilometers away, it took more than half an hour to arrive. The half-murlocs gathered in a tall grass. Outsiders had to pass through the grass first if they wanted to enter. The army stopped silently, and everyone was waiting for his order. Although it was only 100 meters away in a straight line, Lear did not act rashly. Turning to look at Bubblemon. Bobo, you use the bubble to ride Haggis up into the air and observe the half-murloc in front of you. Bobo's eyes lit up immediately. Doing things for their masters gives these little guys a sense of satisfaction that they are needed by their parents. He immediately patted his chest in response. Open your mouth slightly and spit out a bubble slowly. The bubble gradually grew, floated up, and swallowed the wetland lizard hero in front of him. The next moment, the bubble slowly rose into the sky like a hydrogen balloon. Haggis touched left and right and felt a rubber-like touch, which was quite surprising. Looking down at the ground gradually shrinking, his face turned pale again. It seems that flying too high is not a good thing. After the bubble flew to a height of about 10 meters, the line of sight suddenly opened up, and Haggis carefully explored the situation behind the grass. After a moment, he waved his hand towards Bubblemon, and the bubbles fell again. Haggarth walked through the bubble and came to Lear, his amber pupils filled with solemnity. Lord, those half-murlocs are performing sacrifices around a skeleton altar. His tone was a bit subtle. Smoke fills the area near the altar, and those half-murlocs have entered a state of madness. Lear raised his eyebrows slightly. Insanity, how do you say it? Every time the half-fish people make sacrifices, they like to light the mist grass to make themselves lose consciousness and enter madness. It is said that they can use this to receive guidance from the half-murloc god. Misty grass. Lear immediately thought of the smelly giant demon. This thing seemed to be very suitable for setting an ambush. How many people are there? More than 600 people. Haggis' tone became fanatical. Lord, the steel knife in my hand is thirsty for blood, please give your order. No matter who the enemy is, he will become the master's sword and cut through all obstacles. Just like the oath he swore when the Lord gave him heroic power in Lowland City. Lear narrowed his eyes slightly. He could deal with the half-murloc god, but the number of wetland lizardmen was too small. With 15 squads, they were able to defeat 6 squadrons of half-murlocs. The difference was several times greater, and the opponent also had level 10 heroes standing guard. No need. It's not like there are no options. He turned to look at the swamp banshee beside him. Woo, woo, woo. In the gathering place of half-murlocs in the grass, these slippery and smelly beings were making crazy noises around an altar made of bones. There were constant whining sounds of excitement coming from his mouth. Large bundles of mist grass were lit on the ground all around, and smoke spread in the wind. When they smelled the smoke, the half-Murlocs will become even crazier and remain in a state of madness. Because their great father god, the half-Murloc god, controls the three powers of madness, moisture, and half-Murloc. He likes believers to offer sacrifices to him in madness. What makes them crazy is that the sleeping god has returned. During a sacrifice last month, they received an oracle. The great being personally ordered them to sacrifice every other day. God will lead the half-fish people to greatness again. Praise God the Father. During the frenzied sacrifice, the half-Murlocs in the outer circle heard bursts of melodious singing in a trance, and their eyes became a little confused. They seemed to have heard God calling. We cannot allow others to enjoy God's gifts. This thought suddenly came to mind, and while muttering in his mouth, he slowly withdrew from the crowd of worshippers who were circling crazily towards the altar. Disappeared into the grass behind. At this moment, the merfolk were still in a frenzy, and the missing 20 or 30 people did not attract the attention of others. A melodious and light song followed, and the second wave of merfolk left silently. Disappeared outside the smoky altar. Again and again. At some point, in the central area, the merfolk chief who hosted the entire event suddenly found that his voice seemed to be much weaker. He woke up a little from his trance, turned his head and suddenly found that the crowd around him was almost half gone. He suddenly woke up in his heart. Where are the people? Where are our people? Why did half of them disappear inexplicably? The merfolk who were still in a frenzy scolded him and ignored him, still whining and shouting, and continued to circle around the altar. The merfolk chief was so angry, these idiots. Suddenly, a melodious song came slowly in his ears. The merfolk chief's eyes flashed a little blurry, and he subconsciously walked away from the altar and walked out. But just as he walked to the edge and was about to step into the bushes, a sense of terror rose in his heart. He suddenly woke up. He turned around and found that he had already moved away from the altar, and the sparse tribesmen became clearer. He was shocked. Enemy attack. A hysterical roar sounded. The next second, a more terrifying sense of danger surged into his heart. Suddenly, the mud on the ground bulged high, and then popped up under his feet. He saw bubbles expanding with his sharp eyes. His pupils shrank sharply. Before he could react, he saw those expanding bubbles burst with a click. The half-fish chief was heartbroken. The powerful magical energy suddenly burst out. Bang! The terrifying shock wave directly swallowed the surroundings. The mud was blown up 100 meters high, splashing all over the sky, and even a huge pit 7 or 8 meters deep appeared on the spot. But what made people tremble was that after the thick dust and mud dissipated, the half-fish chief was not dead. Large patches of blood oozed out of his body, and he was covered in dirt and sewage. His face was half blown off, and he looked extremely miserable. But before he could react, a heavily armored warrior with a steel knife, a brutal look, and a ferocious lizard head appeared in his blurred vision. The opponent's sword cut through the sky like lightning. No, the half-fish chieftain raised the half-broken bone staff used for sacrifice in his hand in fear to resist, but the fragile bone staff exploded the moment it touched the steel knife. A cold light flashed in his eyes, his neck felt cold, and severe pain came. The world spun around, and finally his face was pressed against the ground, looking sideways at the whole world, and the last sight was one after another heavily armored lizard warriors pushing aside the bushes. Puff! A huge head flew into the sky, and blood splashed several meters high. Only the broken headless body was left, lying in the mud. The 10th level Murloc chieftain didn't even have a chance to react from beginning to end. He was executed directly. Targeted explosion. The Murlocs who were still in a frenzy woke up at this moment, turned their heads and looked at the wetland lizardmen warriors who kept pouring out of the bushes, and immediately went crazy. These fools, they are blaspheming. Kill! The Murloc roared and rushed over. But at this moment, the Murloc chieftain whose head was cut off, his broken body suddenly swelled up, like a balloon inflated to the extreme. Bang! It suddenly exploded. The blood floated up in the sky. What was shocking was that the blood seemed to be guided by something, floating in the air, and suddenly surged towards the direction of the Murloc in a breath. All of it was infused into the Murloc's body. The 5th level Murloc's momentum rose at an exaggerated speed, and in the blink of an eye, it soared to level 9. Lear, who was commanding from behind, had his pupils shrink. He looked at the bone altar behind the fishmen. He felt a familiar breath. God! The fishmen's god appeared. His eyes were filled with almost crazy excitement. The death of the Murloc chief awakened the Murloc god. As the focus of his training, dying like this is a provocation to God by a mortal, and it is blasphemy. His anger will devour everything. At this time, 2 unique attributes appeared on the Murloc panel. Level 9 Temporary. Status: Blessing of the Murloc god. All attributes increased by 80%, lasting 1 hour. The combat effectiveness of these swamp creatures has skyrocketed. Lear's eyes became as sharp as a hawk, staring at the skeleton altar. God, no, that's his prey. The Murloc, whose strength has greatly increased, felt the eyes of God staring at him. He immediately entered a deep level of fanaticism. Great Murloc god, your glory will spread to the world. Kill. The Murloc, with endless power in his body, fiercely killed the wetland lizardman. Form a formation to kill the enemy. Hags was fearlessly at the front line, and his body was burning with raging blood. The wetland lizardmen followed closely and formed a formation. The 5 teams of wetland lizardmen stabbed the enemy like sharp blades. They ran into the Murlocs. Puff! The steel knife pierced the bones. Blood and flesh flew everywhere. The fanatical Murlocs ran into the steel knife head-on, and blood exploded, but the pain did not stop them, but made them even crazier. The bone spears and long sticks in their hands were violently swung. The air was whistling. Bang! A wetland lizardman was hit on the shoulder, and a large piece of the armor was directly dented. Puff! The wetland lizardman warrior drew his knife to counterattack, and directly cut into the opponent's neck. Blood exploded instantly, but the bone-piercing attack did not make the Murloc fall down. Instead, he roared and pounced on the wetland lizardman warrior, hugged the wetland lizardman warrior, opened his sharp mouth and bit him hard. Crack! The armor was actually bitten through by the sharp teeth, piercing into the bones. The pain made the wetland lizardman furious instantly. He swung his claws and tore the opponent's abdomen violently, causing the half-fish man's internal organs to flow wildly. But the wetland lizardman, who had not yet enjoyed the joy of victory, suddenly felt a sharp pain in his neck. Something rushed out of his throat, and blood spurted out of his mouth uncontrollably. From the corner of his eye, he saw a straight bone spear piercing his neck. The crazy half-fish man grinned and tightly grasped the end of the spear in his hand. Ho, ho! He wanted to say something, but the wetland lizardman warrior was no longer able to speak. He fell to the ground with his eyes wide open, and there was no sound. The wetland lizardman warrior was killed. The half-fish man who received the blessing of the gods and increased all attributes by 80% had twice the number of wetland lizardman warriors. It immediately caused a huge impact on the wetland lizardman. Although the swamp gift in Lear's hand never stopped, more energy was still placed on the skeleton altar. The fight between the two sides was too brutal. Even fatal injuries such as piercing the heart and smashing the head could not be cured by the powerful healing skill of swamp gift. The mad fishmen did not care about casualties at all. After the attribute was greatly improved, their combat effectiveness increased several times. Fortunately, Lear was the nurse in the rear, and the swamp gift continued. As long as it was not a fatal injury, it could be saved. But even so, as the fight became more intense, the loss of wetland lizardmen warriors still exceeded 2 teams. Lear's eyes became more and more cold. You, the god of fishmen, still want to hide behind. Bubble Beast, use bubble bombs to support. Swamp Banshee, the song shakes their will. The fierce fighting on the battlefield made everyone extremely tense. After the order was issued, Bubble Beast immediately blew bubbles and compressed the air crazily. Then, like a long-range gunner, he controlled the bubbles to fly out. The bubbles left a long trail, crossed the sky, and fell into the enemy camp. Bang! It exploded suddenly. The powerful impact made the surrounding merfolk fall to the ground. But the level was temporarily raised to level 9, and the merfolk, whose attributes soared in all aspects, forcibly carried it over. He continued to charge with blood all over his body. Hum, hum, a melodious song sounded quietly. The determination in the merfolk's eyes wavered for a moment, and he was a little dazed. The wetland lizardman seized the opportunity, slashed with a steel knife, and more than a dozen heads flew up. But in an instant, the other merfolk came back to their senses and roared and charged. The song was no longer effective. When the enemy was on guard and in the prime of their state, the temptation of the swamp banshee's song was suppressed to the freezing point. This is also the shortcoming of these magical lives. The magic power surged in Li Er's body, and groups of magic energy were released from his body and fell into the front army formation, strongly supporting the wetland lizardman warriors on the front line. This is the swamp, his home court. Although the level at this moment is not high, the magic power is only a pitiful 300 points. But the whole swamp is blessing him, and the speed of magic recovery is incredible. Each time the swamp gift is released, 30 points of magic are consumed. His magic can only be cast 10 times. But in the swamp, he can recover nearly 200 points of magic every minute. It's like a constant spring, giving the wetland lizardmen in front the most powerful support. He is the confidence of these warriors. The long-range support of the bubble beast disrupted the rhythm of the half-fish man, and the wetland lizardmen gradually took control of the battlefield. With the crazy slaughter of the wetland lizardmen, the number of half-fish men is getting smaller and smaller. After the wetland lizardmen paid the price of the death of 4 teams, the number of half-fish men finally dropped to less than 100. After gaining the advantage in numbers, they began to press forward step by step, continuously encircling and annihilating. The half-fish men seemed to realize that they were about to face extinction and began a more crazy counterattack. But in front of the wetland lizardmen who had the advantage, they were forcibly suppressed. The number dropped rapidly until the last 2 teams were left. At this moment, the half-fish men in the back could no longer sit still. Above the white bone altar, an unspeakable pressure emanated. The whole sky seemed to dim at this moment. The broken corpses and flesh on the ground surged quickly and gathered in one direction. In just a few breaths, the flesh and blood gathered and merged to form a terrifying stitched monster with a height of more than 3 meters. There was no head, and the arms, legs, and torso were all forcibly glued together by broken limbs. It gave people a weird and terrifying impact. Blood was still oozing out from the gaps between the stumps. The hideous and weird headless monster with flesh and blood facing Lear. Lowly mortals, you are courting death. The half-fish god was furious. He had been sleeping for too long, so long that he had lost most of his strength. He finally woke up and found his believers again. But in the blink of an eye, he was killed by these idiots. This is the foundation of his revival. If he hadn't lost most of his strength, he could destroy these swamp lives hundreds and thousands of times with just one look. He had no head, but his voice with dark anger resounded through the sky like thunder. Great gods, do you dare to blaspheme? Kneel down and worship. Submit and offer your soul. It was like thousands of people screaming and roaring, like the most painful punishment inflicted on him, and the sound went straight into his soul and blood. God's power, the ultimate existence from this world, just a verbal scolding, seemed to crush everyone's soul. There is no escape, no escape. Lear's eyes condensed. He also exuded a sacred majesty, isolating the pressure that shook the soul. Are you a god? The broken, stitched, headless, twisted flesh and blood body looked at Lear fiercely. Although there was no head, it gave him a sense of terror as if he was stared at by 2 huge eyes. The half-fish god suddenly became excited, and the blood on his body rushed wildly. You actually have the divine breath of the swamp god. The voice resounding around was full of endless surprise. Like a beggar who had been hungry for a long time, smelling the sweet bread that had just been baked and spread with honey. Humble human, can you touch the power of the gods? Give your soul. Godhead, Godhead. If he could obtain the godhood of the swamp god, his power would be greatly restored. It would even be possible to make further progress with it in the future. At this moment, he felt that the god of creation was blessing him. He had just woken up and saw such a good thing. Ha ha ha. Eat it, eat it. Then the half-mallet god was puzzled to find that the other party not only did not dodge and retreat, but rushed towards him with big strides. What's going on? The half-mallet god was stunned for a moment, and then became more excited. The prey was actually going to come to the door by itself. He drove away the only 2 teams of half-mallets in front of him, so that the other party could get closer to him more conveniently. With every step forward, he could feel the extremely desired power become stronger. After approaching 20 or 30 meters, the half-mallet god could no longer bear it. The towering and terrifying soul ball surged out of the flesh and blood suture body and rushed directly towards Lear. The wetland lizard man in front subconsciously raised his knife to intercept. But the dark soul sphere directly passed through their bodies, and their bodies suddenly stiffened and lost their breath of life. Touch it and you will die. More than 2 teams were deprived of their lives. It was too fast, and no one reacted at all. The dark energy had already poured into Lear's body. Hags beside him instantly felt cold in the soul, and the whole person trembled. The soul of the half-Mercury god invaded the body of the Overlord. In contrast to his fear, the half-Mercury god fell into extreme excitement. It seemed as if he saw the scene where he controlled the godhood of the swamp god and transformed into a powerful god. Humble fool, that godhood is mine. Hun, what is this? The half-Mercury god rushed into Lear's mind and saw the sacred object floating in the magic seed, and suddenly a bad feeling arose. Incredible and shocked. You merge the godhead. You are a mortal, an ordinary person with ordinary blood, and your level is only level 3. Can you merge the godhead into your soul? He felt unbelievable and absurd. That is the godhead with supreme power. Even if the gods come, they have to spend a lot of money to refine it before they can use it for themselves. How can a mortal erode the power of the gods? Lear's expression became extremely strange at this moment. I was a little worried that the other party would escape, but now, he has delivered it to the door. His most powerful power is not the warriors under his command but the broken swamp godhead hidden deep in the magic seed. Because of his low level and lack of control, the power he can mobilize at this moment is extremely limited. But in his mind, he is the true god. The dark soul energy immediately wanted to escape. But the next moment, the magic seed spun wildly, emitting endless divine power, covering everything. The vortex suddenly expanded and turned into a starry black hole that swallowed everything. It pulled the remnant soul of the half-Merc god deeply and swallowed it. No, how can a human like you merge with the godhood? Impossible, impossible. The half-Merc god went crazy. He is immortal. How can he merge with the godhood? Why? He refused to accept it. Crunch. The vortex was spinning, and it actually wiped out the remnant soul of the half-Merc god. God, sorry, me too. The moment the soul of the half-Melfish god shattered, the majestic energy surged around like a tsunami. If it were immortal, even a great wizard above level 15 would have his mind torn apart by the violent energy. The residual soul of a god, even if it only had a trace of power, was absolutely extraordinary. But the swamp godhead exuded supreme pressure, swallowing up all the energy. Lear actually felt full. The next moment, the energy began to merge into his limbs and blood. The power in his body increased at an exaggerated speed. The surrounding magic power seemed to be swallowed by a black hole and poured into his body crazily. A magic tide was formed. The tendons, flesh, and bones were all becoming tough. In the rapid improvement, Lear could feel that the entire swamp was cheering for him. The level started to rise from level 3, level 4, level 5. At the moment of reaching a certain limit, he turned his head and looked in a certain direction, and his heart began to beat rapidly. He could feel something that he was extremely eager for calling him. Authority. The long-dormant swamp authority was about to wake up. But before he could sense it more clearly, the energy provided by the remnant soul of the half-Mercman god dissipated, and the feeling suddenly stopped. The surrounding magic power gradually calmed down. Lear was still a little dazed at this moment. He vaguely sensed that the swamp authority seemed to be sealed. The power of the seal had greatly declined. When the seal was completely broken, the authority would appear. He took a deep breath and forced himself to suppress the ups and downs in his heart. He needed to make plans in advance. After calming down, he immediately felt the power surging like magma in his body. He stretched out his right hand and slowly clenched his 5 fingers into a fist. The surging magic power immediately condensed. With a thought, the magic power was compressed crazily, forming a small stream flowing in the palm of his hand. Lear's eyes were full of surprise. His control over magic power was more than 10 times higher than before. It was impossible to control magic so easily before. After taking a look at the attribute panel, the level has soared from level 3 to level 7. Entering the ranks of intermediate mages. The magic on the panel has increased from 300 to 1500. It has increased 5 times. The long stagnant potential has also increased from 2 stars to 3 stars. Devouring growth. turning the half-murder god into nutrients to nourish itself. This is a grand transformation. The level of a level 7 intermediate mage may not seem high, but this is the height that most mages with ordinary talents can only achieve after a lifetime of hard work. It can already enter the Magic Legion and become a main mage, cooperating with high-level mages to cast war magic on the battlefield. Walking outside, you can also be respected as the Master Mage. If you are promoted to level 10 and promoted to a high-level mage, you will be the elite of the Empire and will be respected wherever you go. Li took a deep breath. If it is an intact soul of the gods, I am afraid he can directly step into the ranks of immortals. After coming to his senses, he found that although the residual soul of the half-Mallet god in his mind had been extinguished, there were still a few strands of unique power, which were always floating outside no matter how the godhead pressed. Finally, the swamp godhead slowly returned to calm, leaving only those few strands of special energy floating. Without external pressure, it quietly merged into a thicker energy. Lear curiously perceived. A golden attribute panel quietly appeared in the intelligence system. Divinity. Level, 6 stars, full quota, gold. Characteristics. The characteristics bred by the gods, with indelible unique power, and also the foundation for the immortality of the gods. Evaluation. Extremely rare. Lear took a breath. Although he already knew it in the intelligence system, he still had an inexplicable shock when he really saw the divinity. This time he only planned to capture a half-Murloc territory. The difficulty of this wild monster gathering place was only 1 or 2 stars on the surface, but in the end it exploded a 6-star treasure. Nothing related to the gods is ordinary. Ha 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 ha. Maresman, you are my real friends. In a high mood, Lear tried to touch the divine nature and immediately felt repulsion. The divine nature of the Maresman was not compatible with his. At the same time, a new prompt emerged in the intelligence system. The residual soul of the Maresman god that you defeated intercepted the other party's divinity, and obtained an additional piece of information. The Maresman god used the last divine power to condense the sutured corpse, the flesh and blood slaughterer, which still contains the other party's soul breath in the body, and can put the divinity into it to let it enter the transformation. In this process, it needs to be constantly watered with flesh and blood. If there is enough flesh and blood, it can breed a unique divine life. Lear turned his head and looked at the 3-meter-tall, headless, body with limbs and fragments, and blood flowing. His breathing was trembling. Flesh and blood slaughterer. Divine life. This is a creature that only exists in myths and legends. Now, he can cultivate one. God killing, this is what God killing is all about. This is just a remnant soul, what can a fully formed god do? When he was in high spirits, the bodies of the half-fishmen who had not yet been strangled suddenly trembled, and then blood flowed from all 5 orifices. The high breath of life suddenly extinguished. Plop, plop. The corpses fell to the ground one by one. The divine gift just now was obviously not the power of the half-Mallet god. The increase in the opponent's power burned his own life. In a blink of an eye, the battlefield was left with only the 3-meter-tall, giant-like flesh and blood butcher. Lear's eyes were full of excitement. He took a deep breath and strode closer. When he came to the opponent, the bloody smell of the stitched monster crazily penetrated his nose. His face did not change at all. He stretched out his right hand and pressed it on the chest where blood flowed and flesh was glued together. He controlled the remaining divinity of the half-Mallet god in his mind and poured it into his body. The next moment, the surging pressure broke out instantly. It swept across the world like a tsunami. The hearts of the wetland lizardmen warriors around were beating wildly. They clenched their swords tightly and looked at the huge, hideous, stitched heretic with extreme vigilance. After the divinity poured into the body, the stitched broken body quickly changed from a state that could collapse and rot at any time. The blood that splattered all around converged, and the flesh and blood squirmed piece by piece. They began to approach each other, fit together, and tighten. Gradually merged into a real evil life. It looked like a dark thing that crawled out of hell, from the abyss, and from the tomb of the dead. When the body was completely fused, the headless stitched monster slowly fell to the ground with a plop, shaking everyone. The vicious breath also subsided at this moment. The tense wetland lizard warriors around were stunned, and some of them didn't understand the situation. What is this? Only Lear knew what was happening to the flesh and blood slaughterer. What the other party devoured was divinity, the unique power of the gods. In the main plane of Noel, it is a treasure unparalleled in the world. Once the flesh and blood slaughterer transforms into a divine life, he will have an absolute trump card killer in his hand. This time, the slaughter of gods maximize the benefits. Earn money to get cerebral thrombosis. But this process requires him to constantly water the flesh and blood corpse to feed it. But who would not be willing to water a divine life full of infinite possibilities? Bobo, use bubbles to bring the flesh and blood slaughterer back to the territory. This body has been enslaved by me, and it will become your companion in the future to fight for the city of Wei Lu. These words made the bubble beasts who were frightened by the half-fish god in the back look over curiously. But they didn't see any difference. After Bobo responded, he hurriedly stepped forward to spit bubbles and put the flesh and blood slaughterer into it. Haggis came back to his senses at this moment and strode forward. My lord, the half-fish god. He only saw the soul of the half-fish god rushing into Lear's body, and he didn't know more. At this moment, he was still a little worried. After all, it was a god. Lear said slowly, the residual soul of the half-fish god has been wiped out by me. Haggis's heart trembled. God, was it really killed? The master killed the god. He took a few deep breaths, but he couldn't suppress the shock in his heart. The swamp banshees behind him felt like they were listening to a myth. It all happened so fast that they only felt the majestic power surging, and it was over. Until now, they still haven't reacted to the fact that the half-fish god is gone. Looking at the heroic figure, he felt more majestic and subconsciously lowered his head, not daring to look directly. So far, this battle of hunting gods has quietly ended. If the outside world knows about it, it will definitely set off a storm. But this shocking wave disappeared silently in this swamp at this moment. Lear calmed down and asked the wetland lizardmen to disperse and search, and at the same time gathered the bodies of the fallen warriors. A moment later, the searching warriors took out two strange humanoid lives covered with feathers from the bushes behind. Master, we found two Delsa people. Two unconscious swamp creatures were thrown onto the grass. Delsa people. Lear looked at them curiously. These beings called Delsa people have extremely strong legs in the lower body, which are twice as big as those of ordinary people. They look strong and powerful. They have wide webbed feet, which can easily walk in the swamp. Their upper body is covered with thick gray feathers, like a falcon. Their heads are normal human heads. They are somewhat similar to the legendary eagle-like people. Delsa people. Level 1. Potential, half a star, level cap, level 3. Racial talent, strong and powerful, born strong and powerful. Skills, super endurance, 1 star, possessing super endurance, the physical recovery speed is greatly improved. Evaluation, Delsa people are strong, but timid by nature. Even ordinary farmers can drive them away with dung forks. Potential, half a star. Lear felt that he had learned something new. I thought 1 star potential was the lowest, but I didn't expect there was still half a star potential. This race is also quite good. However, their talents and skills are interesting. They are strong and powerful, with great endurance, and they are timid and cowardly, which is somewhat similar to the swamp people. Wake them up and ask where they come from. The wetland lizardman stepped forward and slapped them with 2 big mouths. The moment the Delsa people on the ground woke up, they saw dozens of heavily armored lizardmen warriors looking at them indifferently. An unconcealable fear rose. One of them sizzled and felt a warm feeling coming from his pants, and a large amount of water appeared. Respected and kind sir, I beg you not to kill us. We have no hostility or threat to you. His legs trembled, and his tone was filled with unspeakable fear, as if he was scared to death. This cowardly look made the wetland lizardmen warriors frown. As warriors, they despise this kind of weak and lowly life the most. If they die, they should die with their heads held high, dying on the way to the charge. Beg for mercy, humph, dig out their hearts, chop off their heads, and it's impossible for them to appear. What is your relationship with the slime clan? Hearing the question, the Delsa man who didn't pee his pants said hurriedly. We surrendered to the adults of the slime clan last month. The status of the half-fish people in the swamp has always been at the bottom of the food chain. These Delsa people actually surrendered to the other side. This, turtle looking at mung beans. What is your purpose here? The Delsa people said weakly. Respected sir, we are here to pass on news and tribute food to the adults of the slime clan. Pass on news. Yes, we have found the traces of the Cyclops that the adults of the Slime clan asked us to find. Lear became interested. Cyclops. Why did the Slime clan ask you to find the Cyclops? The Cyclops is a life unique to the swamp. It has some blood of ancient giants and its body size is almost 6 meters above. It is as high as a 2-story building, and it is like a small mountain in front of ordinary people. Strong physique, with extraordinary strength. It was once even a heavy weapon used by the swamp tribe to attack the city. The average level is over 12, very fierce. It has appeared in many legends. However, with the decline of the swamp tribe, the number has been greatly reduced. The Delsa hesitated. I accidentally heard the chief say that the half-fish man found an ancient ruins. And the magic circle engraved on the gate of the ruins has lost its power. It can't be opened and can only be pushed open with pure force. In the swamp, only the 6-meter-tall Cyclops has such power. The adults of the Slime clan seem to have a way to enslave the other party. Lear nodded. A genuine god, even if only a trace of residual soul is left, has extraordinary means. Enslaving a level 12 life is not surprising. Where is the Cyclops? They seem to have been recruited by the Dark Naga. Dark Naga again. Lear raised his eyebrows slightly. The Delsa saw his doubts and said in a trembling voice. Not far from us, there is a valley shrouded in darkness all day long, where a group of cruel Dark Nagas live. These Dark Nagas are led by a powerful Naga hero. Those Naga recruited us some time ago but were saved by the adults of the Slime clan. Lear's eyes narrowed slightly. How strong are they? Not sure, we can't investigate further. The Delsa man's voice trembled when he said this. They are shrouded in darkness, making it impossible to see their true appearance. People who approach them will be devoured directly. That Naga hero likes to devour souls to maintain his beauty. Gulp, swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and his tone became more and more fearful. No one can get close to them. No one. If it weren't for the adults of the Slime clan, we might have been wiped out. That Cyclops, I don't know why he hooked up with the Dark Naga. Are those Dark Nagas so strong? Lear thought for a while. He keenly felt that there must be something hidden in it. After coming to his senses, he took out the magic map. His mental power surged out, and the sludge swamp area on the map instantly enlarged and appeared in front of the Delsa people. He clicked on the glowing point in the middle. This is where we are. This is the direction where the sun rises. Where are those Dark Nagas? Looking at such a magical map, the feathered Delsa people were amazed. If they had such a map, they would not have encountered so many dangers. Looked at the map carefully, then looked at the sun in the sky, compared the two, determined the direction, and tried to click on the map. Probably here. Lear roughly estimated that it was only more than 10 kilometers away from where they were. The swamp has complex terrain, and it may be another world 2 or 3 kilometers away. And the ecology is unique. With many creatures, it is easy to support a small tribe. After asking for a while, the Delsa people also knew a little about the Dark Nagas and did not provide more valuable information. Put away the map and change the subject. How many people do you have? More than 500. More than 500. It was just a casual question, but I didn't expect so many. The Delsa people said with guilt. Yes, sir. There would have been more people, but there are too many dangers outside. As the bottom of the food chain, these beings with only half a star of potential have a very difficult time surviving in the swamp. How far is your gathering place from here? In that direction. An hour away. 1 hour. Very close. Lear looked at the Delsa people as if he was looking at some treasure. If there were 30 or 50 people, it would be fine, but 500 people would be fatal. What is the city of Welu lacking now? Manpower. If all these 500 Delsa people could be enslaved, the most urgent problem could be solved directly. The strange look made the two Delsa people feel a little guilty for some reason, and they lowered their heads quickly. They were afraid that they would be dragged out and chopped by this human sir if he was unhappy. Lear waved his hand to let Haggis take care of the two people, and let them lead the way after the wetland lizardmen finished searching. He took another look at the flesh and blood slaughterer who was wrapped in bubbles and fell into a deep sleep. Although the price paid this time was not small, the gains were even more significant. The battlefield was quickly cleaned up. In addition to some bone weapons found in the warehouse of the fishmen, 3 or 4,000 kilograms of dried fish were also found. It was piled up full. However, what surprised Lear was that the skeleton altar used for sacrifice had no additional attributes. This made him a little disappointed. This thing is not a divine weapon. You are a god, how come you don't have 100 or 80 divine weapons? Sad, sad. Look down on gods like you. Although the residual soul of the fishman god was annihilated, his divinity was also left. But Lear still felt inexplicably that the other party might not be dead. These beings are so easy to kill, they would not be called gods. But just woke up, it is certain that he was severely injured. The heart is calm. As time goes by, the date of the power is getting closer and closer. As long as he can control the power, a long-dead fishman god in the swamp is nothing. At this time, the lizardmen warriors also collected the bodies of their companions. After counting, the number of casualties was also counted. Not to mention the wounded, there were 6 squads of soldiers who died. Only 9 of the 15 squads were left. For Lear, it was definitely a heavy blow. The troops were not many, and now they were even more stretched. But using 6 squads of wetland lizardmen in exchange for a divine life, this deal was a bloody profit. Death has long been regarded as the final destination by the wetland lizardmen, and dying on the battlefield is even more glorious. No one felt depressed about this, and they calmly waited for Lear's order. While Lear was thinking, he asked the wetland lizardmen to take the bodies of the fallen soldiers. They did not leave them in the wilderness, or melt them to extract the essence of life. People's hearts are condensed step by step, and the most intuitive manifestation is the respect for their own soldiers. The dead soldiers are no longer soldiers, but heroes. Along the way, the atmosphere was not good. The wetland lizard warriors looked at the bodies of their companions. Although they were calm, they were inevitably a little touched. Lear said nothing, but asked the 2 Delsa people leading the way to speed up. There were no more accidents along the way. After walking for more than an hour and passing through a muddy field, news came from the front, the Delsa gathering place had arrived. Lear led the army forward, and a large dry area covered with tall grass came into view. The leaves of the grass were bent and woven into bird nest-like buildings by the Delsa people. The giant bird nest was built sideways, and the rain on it could not soak the inside of the bird nest. It looked quite eye-catching. At this moment, hundreds of Delsa people were busy going back and forth. Seeing the arrival of the wetland lizard people, the Delsa people who first discovered them screamed in fear. The crowd turned their heads immediately, and after seeing them, they fled in panic. Like a rabbit being chased by a wolf, he quickly hid in the bushes, not even daring to look at it for a few more times. In the blink of an eye, the land became empty. Although Lear was mentally prepared, he still felt a little bit amused at this moment. He ran so fast. He waved his hand and asked the 2 captured Delsa people to enter the bushes and call out their chieftain. After receiving Lear's order, the 2 guys immediately straightened their chests and raised their heads like a duke who had received the king's order. Chieftain, the Lord asked me to bring you a message. He strode into the bushes. After a while, a Delsa man with white hair followed behind the 2 of them, and stepped forward with a little caution and a smile on his face. Dear sir, Bart greets you. I am the chieftain of the Delsa people and I am willing to serve you. Lear looked at the elderly Delsa chieftain and said slowly. The city of Wailu still needs manpower. Bart, I am now requisitioning all the personnel of your tribe. From this moment on, you are a member of the city of Wailu. The white-haired Delsa chief was stunned, then looked at Lear deeply, and lowered his head without hesitation. Yes, sir. The Delsa people obey your orders. The weak do not have the power to decide their fate. He has understood this truth since he was young. The existence of the Delsa people has never been achieved by themselves, but by relying on the strong. Before surrendering to the half-fish people, they also surrendered to more than 10 forces including but not limited to orcs, lizardmen, crocodile people, etc. Anyway, they come and go around, and their principle is to surrender to whoever is stronger. The dragon has its own way of survival, and the Delsa people also have their own rules of survival. Soft bones. Coward. What is that thing? Can it be eaten? Compared with living, backbone is worthless. Lear took a deep look at the other party. Considering the other party's strength, it is true that this kind of character can live better in the wilderness full of dangers. No more nonsense, a thought moved. Endless divine pressure surged out. With an absolutely domineering attitude, he engraved the soul mark in the mind of the Delsa man in front of him. From then on, there will be no betrayal. Call all Delsa people immediately and move back to the city of Wei-Lu. Yes, master. The white-haired Delsa chief Bart took a deep breath and answered loudly. Just looking at Lear, the eyes became much more respectful and close, no longer as worried as before. After Lear finished speaking, he asked the other party about the news of the ancient ruins and the god of the fishmen, but Bart didn't know much about these two things. The other party finally confirmed the news of the Dark Naga with him. The Delsa people are about 15 kilometers away from the Dark Naga. Those evil creatures have always been taboo to step out of the valley shrouded in darkness all day long. It seems to be guarding something, but those Dark Nagas are too powerful, and they dare not get close at all. Lear opened the magic map again and confirmed its location with the Delsa chief. Then without saying much, he asked the Delsa people to pack up and move back to the city of Weirdo immediately. The territory is growing step by step, and the gap in labor is also widening. More than 100 swamp people are completely busy. The injection of more than 500 Delsa people will undoubtedly greatly alleviate the problem of labor shortage. Bart, the chief of the Delsa people, did not hesitate and turned into the bushes. I don't know how to tell others. After a while, the feathered Delsa people walked out of the bushes carefully. Began to pack up the items in their nests. Looking at the busy crowd, Lear suddenly thought of another key issue, food. Increasing the population is not so simple, and a series of problems will follow. Food is a typical example. The reserves in his hands can only sustain the consumption of 300 people for half a year. With the addition of more than 500 people, it will be greatly reduced. And the farmland has not been reclaimed yet, and the first season of swamp wheat will not be harvested until 3 months later. Taking advantage of the gap, he waved his hand to call the elderly Delsa chief. Bart, what do you usually eat? The other party was stunned for a moment, and then subconsciously looked at the grass behind him. My lord, the roots of these wild grasses grow rhizomes with a sweet taste, which can make people very full. Rhizomes. These guys survive by eating grass roots. Lear became interested and asked Bart to take some out. The Delsa chief personally took action, and in front of him, he used a blunt stone shovel to dig the soil rudely. From the root of the long and thin weed, a fist-sized black lump was dug out. After picking it off, rub it gently and the skin will fall off, revealing the yellow flesh inside. Bart opened his mouth and took a big bite. Like eating sugar cane, a lot of coarse fibers were pulled off. Chew it, chew it. This Delsa man didn't care, chewed a few bites and swallowed it directly. Gulp. After swallowing it into the stomach, he still looked satisfied. Lear's eyelids twitched. Is eating grass roots so beautiful? He took a good one and looked at it, rubbed off the skin on it, and tried to bite it. It was dry in the mouth, like biting grass roots. Chew it, and finally confirmed that this thing is grass roots. Paw. Seeing Lear spit it out, the Delsa chief was still a little puzzled, as if he didn't understand why he vomited such a delicious thing. Lear glared at this guy unhappily. Staring at the tree root in his hand, its attributes appeared in his mind. Longleaf grass roots. Level, none. Features: contains rich energy, can sustain life needs, but the taste is dry and difficult to swallow, and it is very difficult to digest, and eating too much will easily cause bloating. Contains rich energy. Although it has no level, it is still something. You can keep an eye on it. In case you are short of food in the future, you can use it for emergency. Bart, let all the Delsa people store enough food for themselves for a month, and then return to the territory. Yes, the Delsa chief immediately agreed, and without any nonsense, he immediately ordered the tribe to dig grass roots. Although the Delsa people are not high-level and timid by nature, they are still quite strong. And they are very familiar with digging grass roots, and they can dig out rhizomes in one go. There are a lot of rhizomes under each longleaf grass, and the most one dug out is 30 or 40 kilograms. The output is exaggerated. It only took 2 hours to get a month's food. In the end, each Delsa person was hanging a bunch of longleaf grass rhizomes. It looks a bit funny. Lear didn't care. After making sure that everything was brought, he waved his hand and asked them to follow his steps and return to the city of Wei Lu. It was already afternoon. If they delayed any further, they would have to move forward in the dark. These hundreds of Delsa people who brought their own dry food could be considered to relieve the increasingly serious pressure on employment. The sun sets late. When it was completely dark, Lear and his party of several hundred people returned to their territory. Bane, the swamp hero, immediately came forward. His eyes were full of surprise as he looked at the Delsa man who was carrying a large bunch of roots on his back. "My lord, who are these Delsa people?" Lear said softly. "They are new members of the city of Du. You arrange for people to arrange accommodation for them." Bane's face showed huge surprise. A new member of the city of Du. So much. Sir, how many are these Delsa people? Lear held out his 5 fingers. Over 500. Bane grinned and laughed. Great, great. 500 people. The work at hand has been done. Ha ha ha. The labor shortage has not been a headache these days. Without people, no work can be carried out. It's great to have so much more labor force at once. Moreover, the Delsa people are famous for being docile and obedient, and their timid and cowardly character is even worse than that of the swamp people. When he arranges it, there will be absolutely no resistance. I'll make arrangements right away, he said excitedly and planned to turn around and go down. Lear waved his hand to stop him. Signaling to the troops behind him, his tone became lowered. In this battle, the wetland lizard warriors sacrificed 6 teams. The smile on Bane's face suddenly froze, and his eyes became serious. 6 teams. This is definitely an unprecedented and heavy loss for Wailu City, which does not have a strong military force. The tone was a little dry and unbelievable. Are those half-murlocs so powerful? Lear shook his head. Ordinary half-murlocs can level with one hand, but this time is different. That is, Bane was a little confused. Who else could cause so much damage if he wasn't a half-murloc? The half-murloc god, Lear said slowly. The long-dead half-murloc god has awakened and is in direct conflict with us. Bane's heart trembled. The half-murloc god, he swallowed subconsciously, his lips trembling. The goddess is on top. God, this is a majestic existence that mortals cannot spy on or imagine. They only exist in myths and legends, and as long as the other party shows up, it can be attributed to a miracle. Such an ultimate life, even if it has fallen for millions of years, can possess supreme power as long as it wakes up. It is simply not something that ordinary people can match. We only lost 6 teams in the conflict with God. How lucky we are. Blessed by the swamp god, fortunately you are back. Bane was terrified. He couldn't imagine what would happen to this newly established territory if something happened to Lear. He said hesitantly, "Sir, what about the half-murloc god?" Lear motioned to the transforming flesh and blood slaughterer contained in the bubble. He said slowly, "The remaining soul of the half-murloc god has been destroyed by me. I got a ray of divinity from it and integrated it into this flesh and blood slaughterer. As long as you continue to water it with flesh and blood from now on, there is a chance that you will be able to give birth to a divine life." Bane stared blankly at the flesh and blood slaughterer and said tremblingly, You destroyed the remaining soul of the half-murloc god. And you also extracted the god's divinity. Is it even possible to give birth to a divine life in the future?" He just felt that he had heard some myths that he couldn't believe. That is God. Even if he has just woken up after sleeping for countless years, he is still a god. Mortals who want to kill gods exist only in myths. Now, it appears alive in front of you. When his eyes looked at Lear, he had turned into an almost irrational fanaticism. This is their master, the master who leads them to open up territory in the wilderness. Praise the goddess. He exchanged several small groups of wetland lizardmen for a divine life and strangled the remaining soul of the god. What kind of loss is this? This thing is exchanging rubble for gold mountains and weeds for mithril. Lear nodded, but there was not much joy on his face at the moment. He turned to look at the dead wetland lizard man. These dead warriors are the heroes of my Wailu city. You plan an area and mark it as the Tomb of Heroes. All soldiers who died in the future will be buried in the Tomb of Heroes. When the city hall is completed, we will also build the Hall of Valor to remember all the heroes who sacrificed their lives for the city of Du. In the future, even if the god of death refuses to accept them, their souls can still be stored in the Hall of Valor and be respected and worshipped by the residents of Wailu City forever. Bane's body trembled, and his eyes changed again. He said in a hoarse voice, "Grown-ups." I wanted to say something, but found that any words were feeble. As far as he knew, only the royal family of the human empire would build the Hall of Valor. But those who can remember it are all top figures with great reputations. How could an ordinary warrior be qualified to enter the Hall of Valor? But now, as long as you sacrifice for the city of Wailu, you will be remembered. What an honor this is for a warrior. From now on, sacrifice will be glorious and great. It is conceivable that in time the city of Wailu will have the most powerful, crazy, and ferocious warriors. Bane went down to make arrangements with excitement. This swamp hero has become the current chief government official. Basically, all the big and small government affairs are arranged by him. But he is careful, down to earth, strong in execution, and also trusted by Lear. The body of the wetland lizard warrior was placed in the corner of the territory, and Lear decided to bury it tomorrow morning. After discussion, the location of the Tomb of the Heroes was determined to be 3 kilometers away from the east of the city of Weirdo. There is a dry and flat area here. At the same time, a backup plan was also left, allowing the Vine Fairy to plant vines first. In the future, when the territory expands, the Tomb of the Heroes can also be moved out with vines. The Delsa people were placed next to the swamp people. There are no houses built in the territory, so the so-called resettlement can only allow them to rest in the open space. For the rest, everything will be discussed after the city hall is built. The Delsa people have nothing to say. The characters of these lives are too cowardly, unless they are killed directly. Otherwise, as long as they can still live and have food to eat, they can accept their fate calmly. The strong dominate fate, the weak obey fate, whether strong or weak, they all have their own way of survival. The roots and rhizomes carried by the Delsa people were gathered together and piled into a small hill. The rations for more than 500 people for a month are not small. But if there are no more, we can continue to dig in that area, so there is no need to worry. These lives are easy to feed. It was late at night after all this work, and Lear also felt a little tired. He encountered too many things today. After a simple wash, he prepared to patrol the territory and rest. Coming to the west of Left Pointing Arrow, the large bubble controlled by the bubble beast was still filtering the clear water. Under the starry sky, the water ripples, and the ripples of broken stars appear. The breeze blew, cool and comfortable. Walked over and touched the little head of the bubble beast, and praised it. Leaving a little guy who was grinning happily. Walking to the north of Up Pointing Arrow, the fish farm came into view. There is also a bubble beast guarding here to prevent accidents in the fish pond. This area is divided into several fish ponds, and the 2-star dragon blood-red fish swims in them like an elf in the water. The blood-red body is particularly eye-catching. The long beard beside the corner of the mouth is like the dragon's beard of a giant dragon. It is almost as long as the body. When swimming, it is indescribably elegant and unrestrained. In the past 2 days, bread, insects, internal organs, grass, wild fruits. Almost all foods have been tried, but the dragon blood-red fish has not yet opened its mouth to eat. The matter of raising still needs to be slowly figured out. Turning back to the center, the Vine Fairy is still pulling the power of the starry sky to speed up the growth of the starry sky vines. These little guys are like small light bulbs, and the light they emit illuminates the surrounding dozens of meters. Combined with the starlight of the starry sky vines, it gives people a hazy and beautiful feeling. I didn't disturb them. I watched for a while and prepared to go back to rest. But as soon as I moved my feet, I saw a strange picture in my peripheral vision. Under another starry sky vine, a slightly thin swamp man, with the help of the light emitted by the Vine Fairy, was holding a yellowed book made of sheepskin and reading it intently. His serious expression was like a devout believer worshipping his God. Who is this? He stepped forward with some curiosity and came to the other side. Only then did he realize that this was not the swamp man who was bewitched by the swamp witch. Hano. The voice woke up the young swamp man who was immersed in it. The other party looked up suddenly, and when he saw that the person coming was Lear, his face was full of respect and enthusiasm. He quickly stood up, held his chest and bowed. "Good night, sir." "Good night." Lear nodded slightly. "Why are you still reading here so late?" Hano was slightly stunned, and a little nervously grasped the book in his hand, and whispered. Sir, I want to be a hero. Become a hero, Lear said with interest. It's not that easy to be a hero. Why do you suddenly have this idea? Hano raised his head and looked at him seriously. Because Lord Bane said that I am too weak now. Only by becoming a hero can I help you. Lear was stunned and stared at the young swamp man. He felt a little complicated. Hano saw that he didn't speak, and his tone became a little depressed. I borrowed this book from Lord Bane after asking for a long time, but I was too stupid and didn't understand it after reading it for a long time. They all laughed at me for dreaming and said that I would never be a hero in my life. But sir, who can't know if you don't try? After speaking, he looked at Lear again and found that his expression was subtle. He still didn't speak and subconsciously lowered his head. He felt more and more depressed. Sir, I'm afraid you think so too. He is a swamp man who is nothing. He can't stop the singing of the banshee and can't understand the book. How can he become a hero? He felt a little bitter in his mouth, touched his chest again and saluted, then turned around silently and prepared to leave. But at this moment, a deep voice sounded. Look up. The young swampman paused, subconsciously looked up, and saw a pair of dark, deep, and extremely serious eyes. Hano, effort is like pouring water into a narrow-mouthed water bottle. The effect will not be seen in a short time, but the water bottle will gradually become heavier. Until one day, you will find that your water bottle is heavier than a mountain. Everyone's efforts will not be in vain. Those who give up halfway will not be able to enjoy the sweetness in the end. Also, don't let cheap ridicule become your stumbling block. Other people's ridicule is just a vent of inner inferiority and incompetence, because they are not as good as you and can't grow up as hard as you do, so they have to suppress you through ridicule and make you as incompetent and mediocre as them. His shoulder was patted heavily, and the swamp man could feel the power transmitted by the other party. The surging power. Hano, I believe in you, and I look forward to the day when you become a hero. The young swamp man looked at the encouraging eyes, and his eyes gradually became red. He nodded heavily. August 14th, early morning. The morning mist was thin, and the chirping of birds came from the sparse trees. The remaining sounds of insects and frogs sounded from time to time, adding a bit of life to the morning. The sun has not yet risen in the morning, and the air is a bit cool. The breeze blows through the mist with heavy moisture, making the body surface a bit colder. The crowd that was supposed to be busy, but no one left the territory at this moment, they were all watching the central area silently. 60 coffins made of vines were parked quietly on the ground. This was made by the vine fairy overnight. Through the gap, one can see the wetland lizard warriors who sacrificed their lives for the city of Dew sleeping peacefully. Hundreds of people were silent and the atmosphere was solemn. Suddenly there was a commotion in the crowd, and they subconsciously separated. At this moment, a heroic figure walked slowly from behind. His face was too young, but his majesty became more and more serious as he took steps. Lord of the Dew City, Lord of the Swamps, their protector. Lear. Wherever he passed, everyone lowered their heads and held their chests in respectful salute. Good day, my lord. Grown-ups, salute to you. Lear walked step by step to the front of the coffin without squinting. He held the coffin with his right hand and turned to look at the crowd. The tone was low and solemn. My people who sleep before you are heroes who sacrificed their lives for the city of Wailu and for all our residents. Today, they will rest in the tomb of heroes. And next, I will build the Hall of Valor, inscribe their names, and praise their deeds. All heroes will be remembered and respected by everyone in Wailu City for generations to come. He said with a deep tone. Get up and carry the coffin. The wetland lizard warrior beside him immediately stepped forward, picked up the vine coffin on his shoulders, and slowly turned around and headed toward the tomb of the heroic spirits to the east. Lear walked holding the coffin. 3 swamp banshees with white flowers on their chests and serious faces led the way. In their hands they carried vine baskets filled with fresh flower petals. Holding the petals in hand, they raised them high, fell all over the sky, and then settled on the ground, silently. Along with the flying petals, a melodious but solemn song sounded softly. There are no lyrics, but everyone feels the sacredness, solemnity in it. The crowd subconsciously raised their chests. Many swamp people in the rear were in a daze. If one day they die, they will be supported by lords, warriors, banshees singing, flowers spread on the ground, and all the people seeing them off. Finally, he is buried in the tomb of heroes, his deeds will be engraved in the Hall of Heroes, and he will be admired by countless people after his death. Then even if you die, there will be no regrets. Even the Delsa people who had just joined Wailu City had a subtle change in their mentality at this moment. The dozen or so barbarians who had no sense of existence were mixed in, and their eyes became extremely complicated. In the past few days, they were initially put on alert, and then were put among the swamp people to work with them. Although tired, I saw with my own eyes the vigorous vitality of this territory. A slight change occurred in my heart subtly. Until this moment, seeing Lear's attitude towards the fallen soldiers, the emotions in his heart suddenly took root. In the wilderness, life is like grass. Many more people died silently, unable to even be buried after death. More of a zombie wilderness. Don't talk about leaving your own legendary deeds. If they don't have a territory, maybe it's not that hard to accept that they join Wailu City, become the Lord's subordinates, and even sacrifice for the territory. Looking at the heroic back of the man holding the coffin, more than a dozen barbarians looked at each other from time to time, and they all saw the complex and subtle emotions in each other's eyes. 3 kilometers is not far, but the process makes everyone feel sacred and solemn in their hearts. The sense of ceremony is completely full. Arriving at the designated tomb of the heroic spirits, dozens of tombs had already been dug ahead. Lear turned his head and looked around, then ordered in a solemn voice, "Bury a hero." The wetland lizard man immediately set off and slowly placed the coffin into the tomb. After settling down, Lear personally took the shovel and took the lead, filling the soil with shovel after shovel. The song of the swamp banshee became louder and more solemn now. Let the sad thing of burial be filled with a sacred aura. When the last shovelful of soil was covered, Lear put down the shovel and turned to look around. "Everyone, observe 3 minutes of silence for our heroes." As he spoke, he put his hands into fists on his chest, lowered his head, and took the lead in a moment of silence. Swish, everyone lowered their heads like him. The only sound left in the air was the gentle breeze blowing through the grass. After the time is up. The ceremony is over. Lear raised his head and spoke with a heavy tone. "Please remember this day, everyone. The sacrifices of our soldiers will never be in vain. The city of Wailu will surely rise." Short words are like the collision of gold and stone, sonorous and powerful. After doing everything before, this moment becomes extremely impactful. The crowd looked at Lear with eyes full of respect and warmth again. This is their leader, their master. The funeral was over and the crowd dispersed. Everyone was in a strange mood on the way back. Looking at the companion next to him, he felt a little closer to him inexplicably. Maybe one day, they sacrifice themselves, and the people around them will be the ones carrying their coffins. After the funeral just now, being buried in the land of heroes has become the highest honor in everyone's eyes. After his death, he would be willing to die if he could have such an experience. A group of barbarians who did not belong to this territory also felt the same emotion at this moment. Although he could feel that his companions were trustworthy in his own tribe, he had never felt that everyone around him was a relative. For a while, his mood became more complicated. Bane's heart was also fluctuating when he heard the discussion of the crowd. He is not young anymore. If he dies one day, can he get this kind of treatment? Can he be mourned by everyone? Can he be buried by the Lord himself? Yes, he can. He will work harder for the Lord and contribute his own strength to the city of Wailu. After his death, he will definitely be buried in the tomb of heroes and be admired by everyone. For a while, his fighting spirit soared. He returned to the territory in a hurry and began to arrange the work of the Delsa people. Then he keenly discovered that everyone's enthusiasm today has been greatly improved. A funeral has changed the atmosphere of the entire territory. The addition of hundreds of Delsa people has made the territory run more smoothly. 400 people were sent to the farmland area to open up. With the addition of a large number of laborers, it is expected that the area will be sorted out in 3 days and swamp wheat will be planted. This is the focus of the current work. But Lear, as the helmsman, rarely stopped. The intensity was too high yesterday, and there were many sacrifices. He was not in a hurry to go out hunting and let the army rest. Long-term fighting will make people's nerves very tense, and it is not a bad thing to relax appropriately. The wetland lizardmen also rarely lay lazily on the grass to bask in the sun. But the busy crowd's eyes are full of admiration. Those sacrificed warriors are all wetland lizardmen. Lear came to the fish farm in the north of Up Pointing Arrow and asked the vine fairy to make a vine recliner for him, and sat comfortably on the chair. The wooden table next to him was filled with freshly brewed warm tea, and he would take a sip from the teacup from time to time. He leisurely watched the dragon blood-red fish swimming in the water. It was the first time he was so relaxed since he came to the swamp. But unfortunately, it was still a mystery what these two-star magic creatures ate. They never opened their mouths to eat. Otherwise, it would be a good thing to feed the fish, drink tea, blow the wind, and listen to the banshee humming beside him. At noon, when he was about to go back for a nap, Bane suddenly came over excitedly. "My lord, we found a lot of black dragon broadleaf grass." Lear's eyes lit up. "Where is it? How many are there?" The queen of the swamp wasp can enhance the potential of heroes and activate talents. Even heroes who have activated talents can activate the second talent. He has been eyeing this for a long time. But he has been busy all this time, and the collection of black dragon broadleaf grass has progressed slowly, so he can only put it aside. "I didn't expect to have a job at this time. Most of the farm work today was assigned to the Delsa people, so I sent 5 teams of mudmen to search around. I really found a lot of black dragon broadleaf grass in a dark bush." Bane was also very excited. As he was talking, several mudmen who had just come out of the mud came up with a large cloth bag. They all put the cloth bags in front of them and opened the bags. Lear looked curiously. The leaves of black dragon broadleaf grass are pure black, the size of a palm, and have dragon scale-like patterns on them, which is very strange. Bane said happily, "My lord, these 5 bags are all. And we have only collected less than 1/3. If the quantity is not enough, we can continue to collect." Looking at the cloth bags that were half a person's height, Lear, in a good mood, stood up with his hands on the recliner. "Bane, go get the dragon dung." He then opened the intelligence system and looked through the last updated intelligence. 3. The corrupted orcs discovered that using dried black dragon broadleaf grass and mixing it with blood to ignite smoke could make the swamp wasps fall into a coma, but the smoke could only cause a coma for 10 minutes. They did not control the time well and suffered heavy casualties. Adding dragon dung can greatly enhance the effect. 2 stars. Chapter 71. Lear was in a good mood. He had led a team to hunt down rotten orcs who were covered with big lumps of stings. During the interrogation after the war, the other party told him the news of the queen of the swamp bee as if to divert the trouble. He was very curious at the time, how could dozens of rotten orcs dare to attack hundreds of thousands of swamp wasps? After the intelligence system provided detailed information, he knew the reason and got a way to deal with the swamp wasps. The idea of those rotten orcs to kill with a borrowed knife was directly shattered. I don't know if the other party will turn into a ghost and fight him to the death after knowing that the information he provided not only did not harm him, but might make him stronger. Soon, Bane took out the remaining dragon feces from the warehouse. This journey of more than 1,000 kilometers was all supported by dragon feces, and now there is less than 2 kilograms left. Mixing earth dragon feces with black dragon broadleaf grass will greatly improve the effect. He doesn't have earth dragon feces, but he has more top-level dragon feces. Lear looked at the big bags of black dragon broadleaf grass and asked Bane to light some first. Bane asked people to bring flint and reed fluff for starting fire. Then he grabbed a handful of freshly picked grass, tapped the flint a few times, sparks flew, and directly ignited the reed fluff, and the flames suddenly rose. Put a little black dragon broadleaf grass on it. Surprisingly, the black dragon broadleaf grass just pulled out actually caught fire. But the water vapor was heavy, and the combustion was not complete, releasing a lot of thick smoke. A small handful made the surrounding air turbid, and it was invisible when it was closer. Seeing this, Lear picked up a small piece of dry and tasteless dragon feces that looked like dry mud with interest. Stepping forward, he gently rubbed it, and the residue fell on the burning black dragon broadleaf grass. The next moment, thicker smoke ignited. The faint dragon power surged, spreading over a range of hundreds of meters. The people who were working felt a little horrified for no reason, as if they were being stared at by some ferocious beast. They quickly turned their heads to look in this direction. Lear could clearly feel that the energy contained in the thick smoke became particularly abundant. The combination of dragon feces and black dragon broadleaf grass produced a wonderful reaction. While thinking, he waved his hand and asked someone to catch a swamp pheasant caught 2 days ago, and soak the blood in the dragon feces after killing it. Then put it in. But the effect was no different. On the contrary, the burning was reduced because of the blood, and the dragon's power dissipated a lot. It seems that there is no need to do anything else. Now you can try smoking. Lear was in high spirits. This reminded him of the happy time when he smoked wasps at his grandmother's house in his childhood. A childhood without being stung by wasps is incomplete. He was more interested in the fantasy version of smoking wasps. The only difference is that the consequence of failure in the past was being stared at and swollen like a pig's head, but now, it can cost you your life. To be on the safe side, he ordered Bane to get all the black dragon broadleaf grass. That area was not far from the territory, so it was done quickly. In the end, a total of 15 bags were filled. After the preparations were completed, he ended his half-day vacation, summoned 9 teams of wetland lizardmen, and took 8 bubble beasts and 3 swamp banshees, and set off directly. After several battles, he felt that this configuration was more and more useful. Swamp banshees can lure the enemy, and wetland lizardmen warriors are responsible for frontal attacks. The most versatile is the cutest bubble beast. These little guys can fight frontally, ambush, imprison, and load goods. They are completely all-purpose tools. He had planned to let the bubble beast assist in the construction of the territory, but after several battles, he found that their bubbles were too useful. The more they are used, the more convenient it is, and now they are simply allowed to accompany the army. The army gathered and set off immediately. The location of the muddy swamp wasps is not far from the city of Microdew, more than an hour away. This section of the road had already been cleared several times. The speed of moving forward was very fast. At 2:30 in the afternoon, Lear arrived at the location of the swamp wasp again. Standing hundreds of meters away, you can see the towering tree that is rooted in the depths of the swamp and is 70 to 80 meters high. The swamp wasp built a giant nest with silt and sawdust, which completely wrapped the canopy that was tens of meters wide. It was like a small wasp city. Countless giant swamp wasps flapped their wings and flew, and the buzzing sound spread far away. The black and yellow stripes on their bodies made them very eye-catching. There are 2 pairs of thin wings growing on the back, with a wingspan of more than 30 centimeters, and the body is the size of a fist. The sharp sting on the tail is as sharp as a steel needle, slightly curved, reflecting the cold light. A pair of compound eyes rotated back and forth, reflecting everything around, and the densely packed tiny teeth in the mouth can easily gnaw bones. From the outside, this is an enlarged, evil version of the wasp. The most important thing is their number. They are so dense and stacked that it is impossible to count them. The black tide formed has covered the light in the sky. It is unimaginable how exaggerated the impact will be if the swamp wasps attack at the same time. Master, the upwind vent is over there. I will go to light the smoke. Hags volunteered. Lear glanced at the wetland lizardman hero and shook his head. The swamp wasps are not ordinary monsters. They can immediately flap their wings and leave when they smell something wrong. It is absolutely impossible to force it, even with the black dragon broadleaf grass. And who said to let someone go to set off the smoke? That, Haggis has somewhat missed the mark. Lear smiled and looked at Bubble Beast. Bobo, each of you creates 2 bubbles, compresses the air, and then ignites the black dragon broadleaf grass and dragon feces inside. Wait until the smoke accumulates to a certain level. Control the bubble to approach the swamp wasp's nest and detonate the bubble. Haggis's eyes immediately lit up. Can it still be done like this? Bobo must be in high spirits, blowing bubbles with his companions. Then control the magic power and compress the air crazily. At the same time, put the black dragon broadleaf grass and dragon dung into it. The dragon feces was dispersed into 16 bubbles, and the flint ignited the black dragon broadleaf grass. In an instant, a huge plume of thick smoke filled the air. Fill the bubbles directly. If it were an ordinary bubble, it would go out in a moment. But after compressing the air, it is enough to burn for a long time. After waiting for about 10 minutes and the thick smoke accumulated to the extreme, Lear waved his hand. You control the bubble to fly under the swamp wasp nest. Let the 4 bubbles burst directly and fill the surrounding area with thick smoke. Another 12 bubbles, open an opening to continuously release smoke. Bubblemon immediately started working. After adding all the black dragon broadleaf grass, 16 bubbles flew quietly close to the ground. In order to avoid accidents, Lear asked the wetland lizardmen to retreat 200 meters. Only he and Bubblemon were left to control this area. To be on the safe side, each bubble beast blew out another bubble and wrapped itself in it. Lear and Bobo stand together. In this way, even if there is any accident, you can use the bubble to withstand it. Able to fight and defend against Bubble Beast, the more you use it, the better it becomes. Each bubble quietly approached the swamp wasp's nest from the ground. After a distance of 100 meters, the mire wasp was instantly noticed by the vigilant swamp wasp. Buzz buzz. The wings flapped for a while, releasing a signal that the enemy had been discovered. This stirred up a hornet's nest. Wasps covering half of the sky swarmed in. A black tide formed directly in the sky. Bubble Beast became anxious when he saw this, and he didn't care about hiding it, and directly mobilized the bubbles to fly faster. Braving the mad swamp wasps, they quickly approached the nest. In just a few breaths, the bubbles were already covered with dense swamp wasps. There are 3 floors inside and 3 floors outside. Their tail stingers pierce the bubbles frantically, trying to stop them from getting closer. But the bubbles are like rubber, they can be punctured, but they don't burst. Bubblemon was so tired that he was sweating profusely, and his magic power was consumed at an alarming rate. Finally, the bubbles forced their way beneath the mire wasp's nest. Lear gave the order decisively. Detonate. Click. 4 bubbles 3 meters in diameter, surrounded by mire wasps, suddenly exploded. Bang! Powerful air waves hit the surroundings, and the billowing smoke dispersed instantly, covering the entire surrounding area. The collapse of 4 bubbles released the thick smoke that had been suppressed for more than 10 minutes at once. Rising from the ground, it completely covered the entire wasp nest. The remaining 12 bubbles were not broken, but the tops were all open, and the billowing smoke was like the chimney of a steelmaking blast furnace, with almost substantial smoke erupting. The scene is particularly spectacular. The crazy swamp wasps around them froze, and the speed of flapping their wings suddenly slowed down. Then there was a frightening sound of insects. The body fell crazily to the ground like hailstones. The black swarm of insects was swept away in just a few breaths. Lear's eyes were filled with excitement. Done. The giant wasp nest has more than a dozen exits. Feeling the movement in the outside world, a large number of wasps buzzed and flapped their wings and flew out of their nests. But the moment it leaves the nest, it will be shrouded in thick smoke. It cannot fly more than 3 to 5 meters before falling straight down. The black dragon broadleaf grass with the addition of dragon excrement has become a nightmare for mire wasps. Ordinary people will only feel a little bit choking when smelling the burning of this plant, and will only feel slightly dizzy if they smell too much. But the mire wasp smelled it as if it had swallowed poison. The ground was covered with layers of swamp wasps, some of which were still crawling and twitching. They were densely packed and looked extremely scary. People with trypophobia are afraid of exploding on the spot when they see this scene. Lear calmed down and continued to order. Bubo, use bubble bombs to blow up their nests. The bubble beast beside him immediately blew bubbles. Each giant bubble with a diameter of 3 meters was like a discharged cannonball, streaking across the sky and hitting the wasp's nest. Bang! A thunderous sound exploded, causing waves of air. Large areas of nests collapsed, and debris scattered all over the sky. Buzz buzz. A large number of mire wasps accompanies the nest to fall. He flapped his wings crazily and wanted to fly away. But the surrounding thick smoke has covered 100 meters in the surrounding area, and the thick smoke is billowing, making it impossible to escape. In the blink of an eye, he twitched and fell from the air, following in the footsteps of his companions. Continue. Bang, bang, bang. Bubble Beast attacks madly with bubble bombs one after another. These 3-star potential, level 8 magic beings now show their powerful side. Transformed into a magic fort, the small city-like wasp nest was blown to pieces. The swamp wasp that flew out was instantly enveloped in smoke and lost its power. Such continuous attacks soon destroyed half of the wasp nests. Sudden buzz buzz. From the upper half of the nest, a large number of swamp wasps flew out. A giant mire wasp with a wingspan of more than half a meter, a black flesh crown growing on its head, and exuding an extremely dangerous aura was clustered in the center. After these swamp wasps appeared, they flapped their wings frantically, creating a strong airflow that blew away the thick smoke below. Barely got a place to breathe. At this time, the swamp wasp hovering in the sky above the edge seemed to sense something and rushed madly into the thick fog. Zitza! The giant swamp wasps clustered in the center noticed this scene and let out a harsh roar. The swamp wasps stopped suddenly, flew upward, and flapped their wings above the smoke. Lear's pupils shrank. His eyes were fixed on the giant mire wasp. A strong excitement arose within me. The prey has appeared. Mire Queen. Level 10. Status transforming. Evaluation: the queen who leads the swamp wasps has incredible power. The swamp wasps are not social beings, but after the swamp queen is born, they will automatically be ruled by the swamp queen. The attributes of the mire queen bee are surprisingly simple, with only one level and one state of transformation. Other skills and talents are not displayed at all. But the unknown is the most alarming. Under the command of the queen, the mire wasps began to move around the smoke and join their ranks. The fanning air waves became more and more fierce, and the smoke began to be gradually dispersed. Seeing this, Lear's eyes became sharper. After preparing for so long, you still managed to escape me. Just as the swamp queen was watching the situation gradually reverse, her compound eyes suddenly saw round, smoky spheres bursting out from the smoke below. In an instant, he was close to a distance of about 10 meters. A bad feeling suddenly arose in my heart. But there was no time to react yet. Click! The ball of smoke suddenly expanded and exploded. Terrifying air waves mixed with thick smoke swept in all directions. The newly assembled formation was instantly shattered, and thick smoke covered all the swamp hornets. Pususu! The swamp wasps fell crazily like rain, and the dense formation was cleared instantly. The swamp queen was caught off guard and took a few puffs of smoke, and she was instantly shaken. Lear's eyes were as bright as a torch and his senses were fully open. Through the smoke, you can clearly see the situation on the field. Bubo, catch the swamp queen. The little guy beside him immediately spit out bubbles and silently approached the bog bee who was still struggling to fly away. He accelerated violently and pounced on him, wanting to imprison him directly. But the mire bee queen swung her tail sting. Click! Thousands of swamp wasps lay on it and stabbed the bubble without any damage, but it was directly exploded by the opponent. Bobo was unwilling to give in, but several bubbles in a row were in vain. At this moment, under the erosion of the smoke, the mire queen bee has fallen to the ground. Ordinary mire wasps will fall after taking one puff of smoke, but the queen was still struggling after taking dozens of puffs, and even tried to take off and escape several times. After trying to no avail, the mire queen bee exuded a special power, and a faint yellow shield quietly rose from the body surface, and actually began to block the thick smoke. Once it calms down, the opponent will fly away immediately. Lear's eyes narrowed and he waved. Come forward with me. As soon as he finished speaking, he rushed out of the bubble and galloped towards the swamp queen. The bubble beast behind him followed without any hesitation and rushed into the smoke. In the almost crazy run, the distance of 200 meters passed in a flash. The queen bee of the mud swamp noticed something, turned her head suddenly, and stared at the figure passing through the smoke with her compound eyes. At this moment, Lear could clearly sense the cold murderous intent coming from the other party. Human, you are looking for death. A spirit swept all around, and a curse full of anger sounded in Lear's mind. The queen bee of the mud swamp already has a strong wisdom. Lear ignored it, walked forward indifferently, and the surging power on his body burst out. Sacred and inviolable, the majestic divine power suppressed all directions. Submission, like a bell and drum vibrating in the mind. The queen bee of the mud swamp trembled. Almost out of control, the pale yellow shield floating on the surface of the body suddenly shattered. The billowing smoke invaded, and the breath that had just recovered a little suddenly exhausted. Humans who don't deserve to die, no. No one can enslave the great swamp wasp. A series of screaming spirits attacked fiercely, with an almost crazy roar. Lear's face was stern and his eyes were like an eagle. Imprison it. The bubble beast behind him immediately blew bubbles and forcibly imprisoned the swamp queen bee. But the trapped beast was even more fierce, and the sharp stinger swung and broke the bubble again. The bubble beast was also angry. 8 people blew bubbles at the same time, and then merged together, increasing the diameter of the bubble to 6 meters. Covering from top to bottom, the lower part suddenly opened the mouth, like a bowl, and buckled it inside. The weak swamp queen bee was twitching on the ground at this moment, trying to struggle to fight back, but she could no longer stab the bubble. At the same time, the remaining 8 bubbles that were still emitting thick smoke also came over. 3 of them merged into the big bubble. The exaggerated smoke directly filled the entire bubble. The madly struggling swamp queen bee let out a painful wail. The divine might rolled down, directly cooperated with the thick smoke to corrode the soul. Surrender, surrender, surrender. The endless divine might was like a mountain collapsing, like a tsunami hanging upside down under the sky. The swamp queen bee wanted to resist, but she only felt the terrifying pressure coming, making her soul creak and almost crushed. With the weakness of her body, she was no longer able to resist. The breath of life gradually weakened, and her consciousness was also blurred. When she was about to feel that her life was coming to an end, she was still unwilling to relax, but in the end she was exhausted and fainted in pain. Then the subconscious could feel that there seemed to be something more in her mind, and the deep hatred for that human being dissipated at once. I just feel that it seems that surrendering to the other party is also a very good thing. You use black dragon broadleaf grass mixed with dragon feces to create a super version of smoke, conquer the swamp wasps, and enslave the swamp queen bee, and get 2 additional pieces of information -1. You can use the swamp queen bee to control the entire swamp wasp, and imprint the breath of the residents of the city of Dew in the soul of the swamp queen bee, so that the swamp wasp can distinguish between enemies and friends. 2. Swamp wasps will die quickly if they inhale excessive smoke mixed with black dragon broadleaf grass and dragon feces, but they can be detoxified by soaking in clean water for 3 minutes. Lear looked at the refreshed information with a huge surprise in his eyes. Ha ha ha, I am a Taoist. This is a group of tens of thousands of swamp wasps. What is a wave of fat? What the hell is a wave of fat? Dispel the smoke immediately. All bubble beasts go to the pond to get clean water and soak the swamp wasps in it. From now on, these swamp wasps are ours. Excited, Lear wanted to laugh 3 times. With a high spirit, he immediately ordered the bubble beasts beside him to save the swamp wasps. These are all his subordinates. The transformation between enemies and ourselves is always so rapid. The bubble beasts around him immediately took action. First, extinguish the smoke still burning in the bubble, and then Bobo took the lead and blew out huge bubbles. After the bubble rose to a certain height, it expanded rapidly. Crack, bang, a huge air wave swept in all directions, blowing away the surrounding smoke. Lear took advantage of this time to release his mental power, leaving the breath of the residents of the city of Dew in the soul of the swamp queen. Swamp people, wetland lizardmen, and Delsa people were all branded by him, and the breath was hidden in their minds, which was not a difficult task. Those swamp wasps flying on the edge of the sky, not eroded by the smoke, and in a state of restlessness saw the smoke dissipate. Immediately whistled down and launched an attack. But halfway through the flight, the momentum softened and began to rise again. Strange, how come they are all our own people? Seeing this, Lear felt even better. Turning his head and looking at the swamp queen wasp that was constantly wriggling on the ground, he felt a little distressed. He immediately asked Bubble Beast to return to the original route to get water, and asked the wetland lizardmen waiting behind to come to support. Not long after, Haggis rushed over with the wetland lizardmen warriors. Looking at the dense swamp wasps all over the ground, his scalp tingled. He was a little relieved. Fortunately, the adults have extraordinary means. If they really had a head-on conflict with these insects, the consequences would be unimaginable. Even if he had 10 times more people, I'm afraid they would just be sent to eat. Master. Lear turned his head and looked at the wetland lizardman hero, his smile not diminishing. Let our warriors go to the surrounding area to be on guard. The swamp wasps are no longer a threat. Today's harvest can be said to be full. The smile on his face couldn't be dispelled. Not long after, several little cute guys controlled bubbles filled with clean water and floated back. Immediately controlled the bubbles to enter the dense mud swamp wasps. The bubbles slowly fell down, magically wrapping up all the struggling mud swamp wasps on the ground. The bubbles were not damaged, let alone leaking. After being soaked in clean water, the unconscious mud swamp wasps slowly woke up, and from time to time they gurgled and spit out bubbles with smoke in the water. When their life breath stabilized, the water flow in the bubbles surged, and these wasps were directly expelled from the bubbles and fell wetly to the ground. But looking around, half of them were in a state of stiffness and no longer moved. Obviously, they died because of excessive smoke inhalation. 8 bubble beasts, each of them controlled 3 large bubbles. One bubble can clean thousands of them. Under the high-speed and convenient soaking, all the mud swamp wasps on the ground were soaked in a short while. But the thick smoke mixed with dragon feces was too fierce for the swamp wasps. After the detoxification, the number of swamp wasps still alive on the field was less than half. Lear had no time to care about these things at this time. His eyes were fixed on the swamp queen bee, who had been soaking in the clear water for a long time and still had no reaction. He was a little nervous. This was the treasure that was going to kill him. Ordinary swamp wasps would die, and if they were gone, they could be cultivated again. The queen bee couldn't be in any trouble at all. Sensing that the other party's life breath had not fluctuated too much, he moved his mind and the magic seed was running. The swamp gift was released. After the powerful healing spell poured in, the other party's breath stabilized a little. But the injury was too serious and there was no obvious effect. Seeing that the healing spell was effective, Lear smashed it 20 times in a row. Finally, 4 or 5 minutes after the other swamp wasps woke up, the swamp queen twitched a few times. A string of bubbles with smoke came out of her mouth. The breath of life rose rapidly, and gradually woke up. Lear's mood was bright instantly. Saved. Ha ha ha. Pop. The bubble burst, and the swamp queen bee fell smoothly to the ground. Slowly stood up, flapping its wings hummingly, and the water vapor on its body evaporated directly. This ferocious queen bee seemed to have noticed something at this time, and slowly turned her head to look at Lear. It was stunned at first, and then stepped forward with kindness. Mental power surged out. Master. A soft voice sounded in his mind. Compared with the previous cold and fierce voice full of murderous intent, it was completely 2 people. Lear smiled happily. This is his own people. I have imprinted the breath of the subordinates of the City of Dew in your mind. Don't let the swamp wasps attack them. Yes, although the queen bee could not speak, there was no obstacle to normal communication with the other party. While thinking, Lear saw the corpses of swamp wasps all over the ground. Gather all the swamp wasps and count their approximate number. The queen swamp bee did not hesitate, raised her head, and let out a low hiss. The extremely penetrating sound instantly resounded around. The swamp wasps, whose condition had recovered a lot, immediately flapped their wings and began to slowly rise into the air. The ones that were originally in the distance also gathered in the large group. In the blink of an eye, the sky seemed to be covered by a black cloth and gradually dimmed. Looking up, all I could see were the ferocious figures of the swamp wasps. A wingspan of 30 centimeters, a body the size of a fist, and a black tail stinger that was more than 10 centimeters long. Ferocious and ferocious, especially the stinger. If you get stabbed, it will hurt you so much that you will fly to the sky. And these wasps are at level 5. Who can he go to for justice? The arc of Lear's mouth was harder to suppress than AK. Soon, the queen of the swamp gave a rough estimate of the number. The original number of the swamp wasps was over 200,000, and more than half of them were killed, leaving only 90,000. Looking at the queen of the swamp reporting seriously, Lear's heart trembled. 90,000, only left. These are 90,000 level 5 swamp wasps. They are not some random cats and dogs that can be manipulated at will. And even if they are 90,000 ordinary wasps, they can kill people. This number is too exaggerated. If they attack at the same time, he can already imagine the desperate expression of the enemy when he sees the swamp wasps that cover the sky and the sun. After this battle, the power in Lear's hands has grown explosively. If he had controlled the swamp wasp when facing the half Malik before, he would have been able to defeat them with one hand. And from then on, he no longer had to worry about the several forces near the City of Dew that threatened him. This time, it was a real transformation. It was awesome. Lear took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down his excitement. Do you have a name? The Swamp Queen was stunned for a moment, and hesitantly transmitted her mental power. Akania. Lear repeated it twice and nodded. Akania, I heard before that the Swamp Queen has the power to improve people's potential. This is the goal of this hunt. It's just that I accidentally enslaved the swamp wasp. The Swamp Queen responded immediately. Yes, when there is enough food, we will use the excess energy to secrete propolis. When propolis dries, it will form a unique blood-colored crystal, which has extremely huge energy. It is the reserve food we leave for ourselves. But blood-colored crystals are extremely difficult to brew. If you need them, you have to wait for a month. Lear felt relieved. When enslaving the Swamp Queen bee, what he was most worried about was the matter of improving his potential. If you can only get your talent by killing the other party, it is undoubtedly killing the chicken to get the eggs. But fortunately, he did not fall into such a dilemma. Now Akania only needs to breed for another month, and he can get the treasure that he has been thinking about and can activate his talent. This is a win-win situation. He won twice by himself. Ha ha ha. If there are a few more waves, getting rich is not a dream. More importantly, the price paid for enslaving the swamp wasps this time is only the newly collected black dragon broadleaf grass and the dragon feces purchased at a low price before. Compared to the harvest, the cost is negligible. Blood crystal, how long can you breed it? Akania thought for a moment and said, normally, it takes half a year to a year. If there is enough food, it can be shortened to 3 months. Lear felt more and more comfortable. This is not a one-time thing. As long as he keeps Akania in the future, he can continue to get queen bee crystals. So happy. After the brief conversation, Lear immediately asked Bubblebeast to collect all the dead swamp wasps. These insects are all level 5 life. Even if the energy contained in their flesh and blood is not as good as that of normal-sized life such as humans and barbarians, it is still very considerable under the huge number. The flesh and blood slaughterer with divinity is still waiting for him to feed it. After the battlefield was cleaned up, Lear looked at the giant tree where the swamp wasps lived. There was still half of the wasp nest hanging on it. There were no swamp wasps coming in and out, and it looked a little dilapidated. It was a bit of a pity. If the nest can be moved back, the swamp wasps will have a place to settle down. The Swamp Queen noticed Lear's gaze and responded immediately. Master, if you need us to move the nest, we can dismantle the nest and rebuild it. It only takes 3 to 5 days. Building a nest is the natural instinct of wasps. Even if there is nothing, they can build it quickly. Lear's eyes lit up. Good, good. Not only did you put yourself in, but you also gave me an extra house, right? So sensible, I appreciate it. It would be great if all swamp life was like this. At this moment, a sound of footsteps approached quickly from a distance, and 2 wetland lizardmen rushed to Lear panting. He said in a hurry, Master, the 2-headed ogres are heading towards the city of Dew. They have discovered our territory. 2-headed ogres. Lear turned his head and glanced at the dense swamp wasps in the sky. His face was very strange. There are about 70 or 80 monsters, and their levels are as high as 10. The opponent's location is only about 10 kilometers away from the city of Wei-Lu. He didn't have enough power before, and he hadn't been able to eliminate this threat. Now he has taken the initiative to provoke. Akania, bring all the swamp wasps. Have you seen the swarm of natural disasters? Let you see the world today. The 2-headed ogre's cubs. A group of 2-headed ogres, with an average height of 2.5 meters, like little giants, are moving quickly towards the direction of the city of Wei-Lu. 2 hideous and ugly heads grow on their necks, twisted and weird. The muscles on their bodies are bulging high, as if they were forged with steel, full of power. In the center is the 2-headed ogre chieftain, who is 2.8 meters tall and has muscles that look like explosions. In his hand, he holds a giant mace that is 2 circles thicker than his thigh, with a green face and fangs, and red eyes that are ferocious and cruel. His bare feet step on the mud, splashing large pieces of mud and water, and his animal skins and clothes are stained. The rotten smell of the swamp is not as bad as the stench emanating from them. My king, the territory established by those lizardmen is just ahead. This morning, I also saw a large number of Delsa people. They must have just been recruited. As long as we can kill those lizardmen, this territory can be directly ruled by us. The 2-headed ogre chief nodded in appreciation. Yes, this swamp should belong to the great ogre, he said with a bit of resentment in his eyes. Those traitors would never have thought that under the abyss of darkness, there is actually a passage to the main plane. They would never have thought that we are still alive. The richness of the main plane is something that those traitors can't even dream of. When we accumulate strength again, we will definitely kill back to the tribe and kill all the traitors. There can only be one king in the Redstone tribe. The two-headed ogres around him were all excited. My king, you are our king. The tall two-headed ogre waved his hand to quiet the crowd. The eyes became cold. That territory has gathered so many people in a short time, it must be hiding some secrets. We must occupy it. He brought too few tribesmen. If he did not enslave other races, it would be impossible for him to complete revenge with just a few dozen people. Only by enslaving and commanding a stronger army can he regain the throne. The two-headed ogre follower on the side shouted, "My king, that small territory has only 100 or 200 lizardmen warriors. The day before yesterday, I found that their level was only level 7. I only need to lead 2 teams to flatten them." The two-headed ogre chieftain smiled proudly. Conquer the swamp, start here. He is a level 11 warrior, only 1 step away from breaking through the hero, he can flatten that territory alone. The army was a little excited and immediately sped up. After passing through the wetland swamp, they finally saw the shadowy territory in front of them. In a trance, a tall and magnificent building woven with vines suddenly appeared in sight. Compared with the barren swamps around it, it is so eye-catching and unique. The eyes of the two-headed ogre chieftain became hot. The reason why they discovered this territory is because of this building that keeps rising. I don't know what kind of life those lizardmen enslaved, but they can use vines like elves to build houses. Compared with the territory where they built a thatched house after several months, it is very different. Conquer it, occupy it, this is the beginning of everything. When he accumulates enough strength, he will return to the Redstone tribe and unify the two-headed ogres. At that time, this swamp can even become their bridgehead, constantly eroding and encroaching on the territory of the main plane. Perhaps, a great ogre empire can be established. The inner ambition is unlimited at this moment. It seems that I have seen the scene of myself ascending the throne and thousands of people bowing to him. He is the king who will lead the Redstone tribe to the top. There is not much obstruction in this area. After walking out of the mud, the territory is 400 or 500 meters ahead. Seeing the busy crowd, the two-headed ogre chieftain became more and more excited. He clenched the mace in his hand. Kill! The roar just came out. Suddenly, buzz buzz buzz, a dull sound like thunder came quickly from far to near. The light in the sky also dimmed at this moment. The two-headed ogre chieftain looked up. Suddenly, an indescribable sense of fear surged in his heart. Wasps, countless wasps. The appearance is black and yellow, the size of a fist, and the stinger is like a steel needle hanging upside down on the abdomen. The wings flashed and made a buzzing sound. The wings spread out like a bird. It is more than 10 times larger than an ordinary wasp. Just seeing the other party's stinger, I felt a chill. If I was stung by this, hiss, I felt a chill in my spine just thinking about it. My king, have those wasps also set their sights on this territory? That should be it. With so many people, they are enough for the wasps to eat. The two-headed ogre chief's expression gradually eased when he heard this, and he was about to wave his hand to let his subordinates evacuate and hide first. But before he could speak, he saw that those ferocious wasps did not go to that territory after flying close, but swarmed straight at them. The mind buzzed, and the blood rushed from the soles of the feet to the head, and the back suddenly became cold. The face turned red, and the body trembled uncontrollably. The insect tide was like a sharp arrow, piercing down. No, why are they attacking us? The hysterical roar resounded through the sky. Die! The two-headed ogre chief swung the mace in his hand fiercely. The terrifying power burst out and hit the dense swarm of bees. Bang! It smashed 20 or 30 directly, splashing a large amount of pulp. But the next moment, the swamp wasps that came like a tide directly submerged it. Ah! The screams of the two-headed ogre came one after another. The thick skin, strong body, and explosive muscles were all unable to stop the fierce sting of the wasp. The heavy weapons wielded in their hands seemed so powerless and ridiculous in the face of the attack of the swarm. The ambition to conquer the world just now was poured on his head by a basin of cold water, piercingly cold. The two-headed ogre chief only felt that every part of his skin was crawling with wasps, and the opponent's stings pierced into his body one by one. The trembling poison eroded every pore of his body. Ah! A hysterical roar came out of his throat, and his whole body swelled up, and his momentum soared. A terrifying scarlet flame suddenly ignited on his body. Chi and blood, a unique ability of heroes. At the critical moment, the ogre chieftain actually took a crucial step between life and death. But it still didn't work. The furious two-headed ogre chieftain swung his club with all his strength, killing hundreds and thousands of wasps, but he was facing countless swarms of insects. Under the sharp sting of the tail, his breath quickly decayed, and his face turned blue and ugly. Under the impact of the crazy woodlice, he fell to the ground and was covered by wasps. When the gap is not widened to an untouchable level, the human wave tactics are a classic that will never go out of date. But just when the two-headed ogre chieftain was extremely weak and thought he was about to reach the end of his life, those hideous wasps suddenly dispersed. He swelled up high, and there was only a slit in his eyes, and there was a bit of confusion. Without understanding what happened, he subconsciously turned his head to look at the sky. In a daze, he saw a scene that he would never forget. Surrounded by endless wasps, a heroic human boy slowly fell from the sky. The ferocious and fierce insect tide that covered the sky and the sun lingered around him and became his background. It was as if he was an ancient god who controlled the insect swarm and came across time and space. A queen bee that was much larger than other wasps guarded him. Like a saint who believed in gods. The other party slowly fell, his cold boots stepped on the ground, and a pair of indifferent eyes looked down from a high place. He is the master of this territory. The two-headed ogre chief finally discovered the truth of the matter at this moment. He thought of his previous thoughts and his arrogant idea of conquering the swamp and establishing an empire. The two-headed ogre chief had a strong sense of shame in his haze. How could he have such an unrealistic fantasy? The territory ruled by such a person is also something he can touch. Is he worthy? Before he passed out, he could hear a sentence. This guy suddenly broke through and became a hero. Interesting. Bring him back to the city of Wei Lu. The battle subsided, and Lear stood in the swarm of insects, turned his head and looked at the two-headed ogre corpse that had already been silent, and was a little surprised in his heart. These are fierce level 10 warriors. Even if they were placed in Loran City, they are elite. These 70 or 80 people were drowned by the swarm in a few minutes. The two are completely not at the same level. He felt relieved. This power is now completely under his control. He waved his hand to let the wetland lizardmen who came from behind take back the two-headed ogre chieftain who temporarily broke through and became a hero. The bodies of others were directly carried back to the territory. The blood-eating flesh slayer was still waiting for food. The battle broke out suddenly, and ended even more suddenly. When Lear returned to the territory with the swarm of bees, Bane was staring at the hideous mud wasps in the sky, his eyes full of disbelief. My lord, these mud wasps. He stuttered for a long time and couldn't say a complete sentence. It was true that he had the black dragon broadleaf grass collected, but he did not expect that Lear was not going to hunt the queen bee, but to enslave the entire hive. Who could have thought of this? Outrageous, too outrageous. Lear smiled. He pointed to the swamp queen bee flying slowly beside him. Bane, this is the swamp queen bee, Akania. She will lead the bee colony. These swamp wasps will not harm our residents. Bane immediately saluted the swamp queen bee. Bane, hello, Lord Akania. At present, the Lord has appointed me to temporarily handle the government affairs of the city of Dew. You can ask for anything you need. In this world full of magic, as long as life reaches a certain level, it will basically have strong wisdom. They have long been accustomed to it. Akania looked at Bane with her compound eyes. The spirit emanated. Greetings, Lord Bane, I am the Master's loyal servant. Bane's heart trembled. He secretly glanced at the calm Lear. He shouted wildly in his heart. Sure enough, sure enough. The Lord must be the Son of God, he must be. Otherwise it would be impossible to be so outrageous. This is the cruel and tyrannical queen of the swamp bee. How long has it been since he became a loyal servant? But he was not convinced. In terms of loyalty, who can compare with him? Lear didn't know that this swamp man hero had so many psychological activities, and said slowly. You should communicate frequently. There are still many things that need your cooperation in the future. Bane and the Queen of the Swamp Bee responded in unison. Yes, Lord. As you wish, my lord. Lear nodded, thought for a while, and said softly. Akania, send people to explore the vicinity of the city of Weird to see where to build a nest. There are 12 tall tree people in the central area of the city of Weird. But compared to the towering tree of 70 to 80 meters high where the swamp wasps originally built their nests, it is still too small to support more than 90,000 swamp wasps. Moreover, if they are stationed in the territory, tens of thousands of swamp wasps will rise and fall every day, which will produce huge noise. He just experienced it deeply. Being surrounded by insect swarms is cool, but the noise is really unbearable for ordinary people. It is unbearable to have a mosquito flying by your ear, and tens of thousands of swamp wasps with a wingspan of 30 centimeters flying up can kill you. Yes, master. The swamp queen bee immediately responded. After leaving, she flapped her wings and flew into the swarm of insects in the sky, and ordered the worker bees to search for suitable areas for nesting. At the same time, some swamp wasps were asked to go back to dismantle the old nest. Lear didn't care about Akania. The queen bee was no less intelligent than an ordinary adult, so she arranged it herself. As for the nesting location, he didn't have high requirements, as long as it was within 3 kilometers. Swamp wasps are flying creatures, and they can quickly come to support even if they are a little far away. The distance will not cause too much restriction. After Akania left, Bane seemed to think of something and stepped forward cautiously. Looking at the strange behavior of this swamp hero, he asked curiously. Bane, what else? Bane immediately said firmly. My lord, my loyalty to you is unmatched by anyone. Lear's mouth twitched. Why did he say this for no reason? Okay, I know, go down to work. Bane immediately turned around and left happily. Look, my lord still needs me. The impact today is a bit big, and this swamp man's mentality is unbalanced. While thinking, Lear looked at the wetland lizard man who was carrying the corpse of the two-headed ogre. He stepped up. All these corpses are sent to the side of the flesh and blood slaughterer. The divine life that is transforming needs flesh and blood to complete the transformation. He hasn't fed much since he got it yesterday. At this time, Bubble Beast also returned with more than 100,000 level 5 swamp wasp corpses. More than a dozen large bubbles were filled. Lear waved his hand and asked these little guys to follow the wetland lizardmen. The flesh slaughterer was placed next to the level 9 swamp treemen. Since these treemen were conquered, their presence has been very low. But as the last line of defense of the City of Wisdom, it has always been his safety guarantee for hunting during this period. As long as the level of the swamp treeman is upgraded to level 10, it can leave the earth and walk freely. The role it can play is completely different. Unfortunately, it will take some time for authority to be revealed. Now he cannot promote lives with potential above 2 stars. Soon, the wetland lizardmen piled dozens of two-headed ogre corpses that were 2 meters tall and as strong as bulls next to the sleeping flesh and blood slaughterer. The sturdy two-headed ogre instantly turned into a baby compared to the flesh and blood slaughterer who was over 3 meters tall without his head. Massive swamp wasp carcasses were also dumped aside, piling up into a hill. Feed. What a feeding. Lear looked at the stitched monster and raised his eyebrows slightly. I opened the previous intelligence prompt and looked at it a few more times. Is it the same as improving the potential of the wetland lizardmen before? In confusion, he suddenly saw a faint scarlet light emitting from the flesh and blood slaughterer. Light surged out and enveloped the surrounding corpses. The corpses seemed to have been soaked in high-concentration sulfuric acid. Stab. Emitting puffs of smoke. Then let it stir-fry quickly to dissolve. It turns into residue at a speed visible to the naked eye. The speed was so fast, in just a dozen breaths, more than 100,000 mire wasps, and 70 or 80 two-headed ogre corpses were all devoured. There were only fragments of debris left on the field. Lear could sense that after devouring so many corpses, the aura of the flesh slayer became slightly stronger. After eating so much, he only got a little bigger. He was quite surprised and delighted. The opponent's foundation is absolutely terrifying. Cultivate, intensify cultivation. And with the presence of these terrifying natural disasters like swamp wasps, hunting can be carried out on a larger scale. Don't worry about flesh and blood. At this moment, a wetland lizardman warrior came quickly to report the news. Master, the captured two-headed ogre has awakened and asked to see you. Lear was a little surprised. How long did it take for the two-headed ogre chief to wake up after being so seriously injured? Somewhat curious, he turned around. Arriving at the holding area, Lear looked at the awakened ogre with interest. The two-headed ogre chief was now bound like a rice dumpling by chains as thick as his thumb. It was difficult to even breathe and I couldn't move at all. Haggis stared at it coldly. Once the other party made any change, the wetland lizard man hero would immediately teach him how to behave with a steel knife. Tap tap, tap tap. Hearing the footsteps approaching, the two-headed ogre chief lying on the ground, covered in bruises, with swollen eyelids and only a line of eyes exposed, looked sideways. The heroic figure he saw before he fell into coma gradually became clearer. His face became a little complicated. I didn't expect that humans would build a territory in this swamp. Lear looked down at this creature with two heads calmly. The opponent has a main head and a smaller secondary head growing next to its neck. It was the main head that spoke, and the secondary head always had its eyes closed. These lives are really interesting. In modern times, these are called conjoined twins. They are congenital defects that can be cured. The two-headed ogre didn't wait for Lear to answer, and his voice became deeper. Great human lord, I am willing to use all the wealth of the Redstone tribe in exchange for my life. My revenge has not been completed yet, and I am not willing to accept it. Even if it means death, I will hang all those betrayers. Lear's eyes narrowed slightly. Redstone tribe, where are your people? Also in the swamp. The two-headed ogre subconsciously wanted to shake his head, but couldn't move his head and his body squirmed. After regaining consciousness, he said bitterly, "No, the Redstone tribe is not in the main plane. Our tribe exists in a demi-plane." As he spoke, his tone became excited. "Those traitors killed my father half a year ago and took away the throne. While escaping, my men and I accidentally came to the swamp. The Redstone tribe has the wealth we have accumulated over hundreds of years. As long as you are willing to help me eradicate that traitor, I am willing to dedicate everything to you. Even if it means my life." Demiplane. Lear's pupils shrank. These two-headed ogres are not from the main plane, but from a demiplane. This made him curious. Outside of the main plane, there are countless dimensional planes. These planes are dead and empty. Some are rich in minerals and have piled up into mountains. Some are buried with the relics of ancient civilizations. Some are the nests of some powerful beings. But without exception, every time the dimensional plane connects to the main plane, it will attract countless prying eyes. Because this means that there may be an unexplored treasure waiting for him to lift his skirt. A demiplane is a world that has not developed into a complete plane. But no matter what, he was very interested. After thinking about the demiplane, Lear withdrew his mind and stared at the two-headed ogre hero who had awakened during the battle. The opponent's attributes are the same as those of the Swamp Queen, very simple. Two-headed ogre. Level 11. Status: transforming. The battle just now caused the opponent to burst into life and death and enter transformation. When the transformation is completed, it will inevitably become a heroic unit. The level 11 heroic unit became a prisoner. Tisk tisk tisk. Just thinking about it made his heart flutter. Are you strong? Sorry, you are mine now. Looking at Lear's subtle eyes. The two-headed ogre lord on the ground felt a little panicked for no reason, as if he was being targeted by some ferocious demon. He took a deep breath, suppressed his inner uneasiness, and said in a deep voice, "Dear sir, it's not just wealth. As long as you can help me kill the traitor, I am willing to lead the Redstone tribe to surrender to you, become your weapon, and fight for you." At this moment, he had nothing left. The traitor who killed his father still rules his tribe. The last of his subordinates and companions had all died in battle. He has also become a prisoner and may be beheaded at any time. He no longer had any leverage, so he could only put down whatever he could. As long as he is alive, there is hope. Even if he is reduced to a slave, he will definitely take revenge, absolutely. His eyes became extremely determined. And there is nothing shameful about surrendering to such a person. Thinking of the overwhelming attack of woodlice, there is still some shadow in my heart at this moment. When Lear heard this, he was a little surprised that what this guy said was actually sincere. Interesting. Relax your mind, I will leave a mark on your soul. From now on, you will become my slave. The two-headed ogre chief gritted his teeth. Can you avenge me? Lear looked directly at him. My subordinates will never be bullied by others. The territory you were supposed to occupy has been taken away by an outsider. Then he is not robbing you, but robbing me. Why do those traitors dare to snatch territory from me? Why do they rule my tribe? Why do they take my wealth? I will send out troops to take back my territory, my subjects, and my wealth. The two-headed ogre chief felt his brain shut down for a moment. This gentleman has such strong logic that he didn't know how to answer for a moment. He took a deep breath and said in a shaky voice, "That's how it should be. I'm going to execute all those traitors." He said with caution, "Sir, I am willing to become your slave and serve you." Lear's eyes were deep. A man is a swordsman and I am a fish. At this point, it doesn't really matter whether the two-headed ogre is willing or not. At most, it is the difference between forced enslavement and active enslavement. After the soul mark is imprinted, it is the same. While thinking, the godhead within the magic seed was quietly moving. Sacred, majestic, untouchable, unexplorable, mysterious and surging pressure swept over it. The two-headed ogre was instantly frightened. He fell to the ground, looking sideways at the human boy standing in front of him. The face that was too young now looked even more majestic, not angry but powerful. With every move he makes, he commands all directions, like a king who controls the fate of countless people. This scene slowly overlaps with the previous scene of controlling the insect swarm and coercing all directions. Double punch. His heart trembled, and without any thought of resistance in his heart, he was directly imprinted with a soul mark. But at the moment when the mark was carved, Lear suddenly felt dizzy, and there was a dangerous aura in his mind. He held his breath fiercely and took a few slow breaths before the dazed feeling gradually dissipated. A sudden realization suddenly arose in my heart. Backlash. There are too many imprints on the soul. His soul at this moment could no longer bear a more powerful enslaving power. Every trace imprinted on a subordinate's soul will involve a part of his soul power. Today, the Mire Queen, who commands a mass of swamp wasps, and the two-headed ogre, which is up to level 11 and is transforming into a heroic unit, are inscribed one after another. Let his soul endure to the limit. He took a deep breath and looked a little solemnly. It's no wonder that the gods of this world don't imprint all of their believers so that they will be eternally loyal to them. You can even often hear news of betrayals of your own religious sects and gods. It's all for a reason. If the soul can be infinitely powerful and make everyone loyal to itself, then perhaps there will only be one ruler of this world. Take a deep breath and calm down. The skill of God's residual power can be powerful, but it requires his soul to be strong enough. Otherwise, it will be difficult to withstand the backlash of those enslaving people. Authority is still authority. As long as he can control the authority, he can usher in a huge improvement, and this problem will not be too serious. Owner. The voice of the two-headed ogre chief interrupted his thoughts, and all the hostility in the other person's eyes had dissipated. The mark engraved on the soul can directly change its concepts and thoughts. Extremely domineering. Lear was furious when he saw this. The magic power in the body is mobilized. Bounty of the swamp. A powerful healing spell poured into his body, and his weak aura immediately stabilized. Waving his hand, he asked the wetland lizard man to untie the chains. After the two-headed ogre, who was tied up like a dumpling, regained his freedom, he stood up with a complicated look in his eyes. He turned his head and looked around, then slowly knelt on one knee, lowered his head, and saluted Lear with the most humble attitude. Master, Ed Redstone, salutes you. Seeing this, Lear's mood became better again. In one day, he harvested Akania, the queen of the swamp bee, and the 11th level two-headed ogre chieftain. This is too cool, he likes it. He also accepted the backlash. And the other party also brought a piece of news about the demoplane. This made him very important. Ed, stand up, tell me about the situation of the Redstone tribe and the demoplane. The two-headed ogre immediately stood up and said respectfully, Master, the Redstone tribe has been passed down for more than 500 years. Its name is named after our Redstone family. We have always occupied half of the broken star plane, and the territory we rule covers an area of more than hundreds of kilometers. The tribe has more than 10,000 people. Every ruler of the tribe will be crowned as king, and it has always been ruled by our family. But just half a year ago, my father was ambushed and killed by a lowly traitor. I was also demoted, and later the other party even sent heavy troops to hunt me down. After a few words, Lear had a general understanding of the Redstone tribe and the other dimensional plane called the Broken Star Plane. The number of the two-headed ogres in the Redstone tribe exceeded 10,000, occupying half of the territory of the plane, in brackets, hundreds of kilometers. In addition, the environment of that plane is harsh, the products are scarce, and the food is short. Survival is a big problem. So occupying hundreds of kilometers of territory can only support tens of thousands of people. In addition to the two-headed ogres, there are 7 or 8 small races in it, but the geographical location they occupy is more desolate, and the two-headed ogres are unwilling to occupy it. The so-called traitor is the person who sees the position of the chief of the Redstone tribe. He really didn't want to call the chief of a tribe of 10,000 people a king. It's too cheap. But the traitor should not be underestimated, his level has reached level 13. This guy, is only level 11, and he was not a hero unit before, so he can't compare at all. But it seems that there is nothing to gain from this plane. As he talked, Lear was unwilling to give up and asked about the specialties in it. The two-headed ogre chief answered a lot, but he was not interested. Instead, when talking about the mine, an unintentional remark made him excited. In the Redstone tribe, we mainly rely on the 3-tailed pigs to provide meat. Those livestock are easy to feed. As long as they have wild grass to eat, they can grow meat. If there is enough food, it only takes 3 months to grow to 600 kilograms, so the warriors of our Redstone tribe are relatively strong in combat, and they occupy as many as 7 mineral veins. Lear suddenly interrupted him. Tell me more about these 3-tailed pigs. The ogre chief was stunned. Sir, don't you talk about the mine. What's so strange about pigs? Lear glared at him unhappily. Stop talking nonsense. Can you grow 600 kilograms of meat in 3 months? This is simply a huge fortune. What kind of bullshit or gold can compare with this good thing? Food is not scarce in the swamp, but it becomes a bit scarce in the wilderness. People who often raise pigs should know the concept of a pig that can grow 600 kilograms in 3 months and 90 days. That works out to 6.6 kilograms of meat per day. As soon as he woke up, the pig in his pig pen weighed another 6.6 kilograms. I can't finish it. I can't finish it at all. At present, the food in Wailu City is relatively simple, and the inventory is pitiful. The only meat available is fish. If 3-tailed pigs can be raised, it will undoubtedly greatly improve food self-sufficiency. More importantly, this is a magical world. Raising pigs is not just for eating. The divine life of the flesh slayer needs to be watered with flesh and blood, and the wetland lizardmen can also gain power and evolve from the life essence of the corpse. Perhaps to ordinary people, these 3 pigtails are valuable, but they are not important. But in Lear's eyes, this is strategic material. The strength of a territory requires not only strong military strength, but also sufficient logistical support. War is always about economics and logistics. Seeing how serious he was, the two-headed ogre chief immediately took it seriously. Master, we accidentally discovered the 3-tailed pig in a pothole. We didn't pay much attention to it at first. We thought it just had a few more tails than the ordinary pig. Later I found out that the other person could eat a huge amount of food every day. And his growth rate was astonishingly fast. An ordinary pig weighs less than 50 kilograms, but the other pig has grown to 300 to 400 kilograms. And they are not picky about their food at all. As long as you give them wild grass, they can grow meat. He said it with a bit of bitterness. But the Broken Star Plain is too barren, with very little grass. So we can only barely maintain a life of eating meat for a month. Lear said enthusiastically. Is it easy for 3-tailed pigs to breed? The two-headed ogre chief had a strange expression on his face. As long as there is enough food, they can give birth to more than 10 piglets in 1 litter, and they can give birth to 1 litter in 4 months. Give birth to more, grow faster, eat as much as you want. Lear's eyes became brighter and brighter. No wonder the big forces in the main plane are all coveting the secondary plane. According to various legends, Once the secondary plane appears, they will be beaten to death. Those secondary planes are untapped treasures. He had never heard of any livestock growing so fast. And feeding is so cheap. Isn't this the chosen one? Where is that space gap? If we enter it now, can we get the three-tailed pig? The two-headed ogre chief said solemnly. Master, the space gap is not far from our station, but if you want three-tailed pigs, you don't need to enter the broken star plane. I brought a few out when I escaped. Lear was stunned for a moment, with a strange expression on his face. Aren't you people who were being hunted and fleeing? Who is running away with pigs when they are fleeing? It feels like an eye-opener. This magical world really has no logic at all, right? After a moment of silence, he hesitated. When you escaped, did you bring anything like the dragon egg artifact with you? The ugly face of the two-headed ogre chief twitched, and his eyes were filled with resentment. If we had this thing, would we still run away? Lear waved his hand and said impatiently. Come on, follow me and bring back the three-tailed pig. The two-headed ogre chief smiled bitterly and nodded. He has never seen anyone so active in catching pigs. It was already 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and Lear didn't waste any time. He took 5 teams of wetland lizard warriors and set off straight away. These are used to drive away pigs. The real fighting power is the more than 10,000 mire wasps flying overhead. Once these ferocious bugs reach a large scale, they will be a natural disaster that can make everyone tremble. After Lear enslaved the mire queen, he also gained command over the mire wasps. Can issue simple orders such as attack, retreat, and alert. No wonder the soul cannot carry more power. He appears to be enslaving only one mire queen, but in reality he controls the entire colony. The traveling speed was very fast, and the swamp monsters on this road had already been cleared away without any obstacles. We arrived at the gathering place of the two-headed ogre before sunset. I came here once before to explore, but this time I felt a little different. This gathering place is built on dry and hard ground, surrounded by more than a dozen rough buildings mixed with wood and stone, which is full of primitive feeling. It was deserted now, with only some simple living tools piled up haphazardly. The two-headed ogre chief looked at his territory and felt a little sad for no reason. Although Wailu City was established in the swamp not long ago, under the management of its owner, a magnificent building more than 10 meters high and completely woven with vines has been built. And he also enslaved hundreds of people to work in Wailu City. He even commands a swarm of bees that looks like a natural disaster. And in the territory he has been running for such a long time, he has only made so much tatters. People are more likely to die than others. I feel ashamed in my heart. Taking a deep breath, he pointed to the tall grass behind the house. Master, we kept the three-tailed pig in the back. Lear nodded slightly and strode forward with everyone. The mire wasps in the sky have included the entire area under surveillance, so there is no need to worry about safety issues. Passing through the rough primitive wooden and stone houses, there is a 1-meter wide path in the grass behind, and the ground is trampled smooth. After walking 30 or 40 meters along the path, a circular pigsty surrounded by firewood appeared in front of us. The stench of fermented feces assaulted my nostrils and stung my eyes. Lear frowned slightly, his magic power surged, and his face looked better after the stench around him was dissipated. Looking around curiously, the pigsty was about 30 meters in diameter, and there were 20 extremely strong black fat pigs growing in it. The whole body was covered with mud, forming a thick armor of mud. The shoulder height of all of them exceeds 1.5 meters, and the body length is at least 3.5 meters. Standing on the ground, it looks like a mountain of meat, which is very visually impactful. Three-tailed pig. Magic life. Level 1 star. Racial talent 1. Super strong digestion. The three-tailed pig can extract the nutrients needed by the body from everything eaten in its stomach, and anything that cannot be consumed will be quickly excreted from the body. 2. When hungry, the three-tailed pig will not feel full and can keep eating. Evaluation: if they don't need rest, they can last a whole year. Good guy, these three-tailed pigs are actually magical beings. Lear's eyes lit up. These pigs have no skills, but like the swamp banshee, they have 2 racial talents. No wonder the two-headed ogre chief said that the other party could grow to 600 kilograms in 3 months. These 2 talents are purely for eating. A powerful digestion, and never hungry. If this doesn't make you fat, who will? If the three-tailed pig were placed on Earth, the price of pork would only be 3 yuan a pound. But this is what he needs. Hags, take the people and drive all the three-tailed pigs back to the city of Wailu. We will build a large pig farm in the future. He already has a fish pond, and now he has a pig farm, ha ha ha, the future is bright. Haggis, the hero, shrugged his nose, resisted the stench and entered it, and led the wetland lizardmen to drive away the three-tailed pigs. It is also difficult for these soldiers. They are good at fighting on the battlefield, but they have never done anything like driving pigs. Fortunately, the gluttonous life is quite docile, and it will just run away if it is driven away casually. After the three-tailed pig left and looked at the empty pigsty, Lear seemed to have thought of something and asked curiously. "Ait, why didn't you see the three-tailed pig cub?" The two-headed ogre chief said quickly. "Master, a group of terrifying giant mosquitoes passed through the border some time ago. They killed all the cubs and took them away. They also killed 3 of our adult pigs," he said, feeling a little distressed. "These pigs are raised little by little." Giant mosquito. Lear suddenly thought of the giant flesh and blood mosquito that hunted giant pythons that he had discovered when he was looking for the swamp banshee. Are they the same group? Subconsciously, he raised his head and glanced at the swamp wasps that were blocking the sky. How do those giant flesh and blood mosquitoes compare with the killing machines he controls? Do you know where those giant mosquitoes are? The two-headed ogre chief pointed in one direction. 10 kilometers ahead from this location, there is an area with unique vines. Those giant mosquitoes have built nests in it, and they are all full of mosquitoes. He said he was a little scared. At that time, I followed him and was almost discovered by the other party. The ruler of those giant mosquitoes, the Mosquito Queen, is a powerful hero whose level has reached level 13. Mosquito Queen. This title aroused strong curiosity in his heart. But after looking at the darkening sky, I still suppressed the urge to go and find out. Take a deep breath and speak slowly. Tell me more about it when you get back. Now let's drive the three-tailed pig back. Today's harvest is too great and needs to be digested properly. In addition, it is already August 14th. Early this morning, August 15th is the time for the intelligence system to be refreshed. Return. When Lear led the army to drive the three-tailed pig back to his territory, it was completely dark. The light emitted by the vine fairy became the only light in the territory. Among the scattered lights, it looks particularly eye-catching. When night falls every day, it is their busiest time. The city hall, which covers an area of more than 200 meters in diameter and is completely woven with starry sky vines, has reached a height of 12 meters. The visual impact of suddenly seeing such a building in the primitive swamp is unparalleled. Magnificent and towering. These are the results of the little guy's hard work during this period. After a busy day, the crowd rested on the grass. The swamp people and the Delsa people have mingled together, talking to each other, and passing the free time of the night. Most swamp life has dim vision, and an environment without much light will not make them feel uncomfortable. After the three-tailed pig driven by the wetland lizard people entered the territory, it immediately aroused curious crowds. These 23-tailed pigs are all adults and weigh more than 600 kilograms. That is to say, it has no fangs, otherwise it would be a beast if it charges. Is this a pig? Why does it have 3 tails? It's the first time I've seen such a strong one. Looking at the fat on their bodies, they feel delicious. So fat, I think. The buzzing crowd immediately caught Bane's attention, and he quickly stood up and came out to greet them. When he saw 20 fat three-tailed pigs, his mouth watered. The tone was excited. "Sir, these pigs are so strong. Enough to feed us for a week." Lear smiled. "These three-tailed pigs are not meant for slaughter. You go find a piece of land and raise them in captivity." The tone was cheerful. Three-tailed pigs only need to be fed for 3 months to grow to 600 kilograms, and they can give birth to 3 litters of cubs every year. Every time a litter is born, the number is no less than 10. It won't be long before we can breed them. At that time, we can have fresh pork to eat every day. Being able to eat meat every day is a treatment that only the noble men in Lowland City can have. For ordinary people, it would be considered good if they could eat it 3 or 2 times a year. The more Bane listened, the more surprised he became. It felt like listening to a bard telling those legendary stories. He had raised pigs before, and it would be great if they could grow to 50 kilograms in 3 months. These pigs with 3 tails can actually grow to 600 kilograms. God of the swamp, this is a miracle. My lord, this is unbelievable. But as he spoke, he calmed down a bit and asked hesitantly, what should I feed them? The example of dragon blood redfish is right in front of us. Those 2-star magical beings have a lot of power, but they don't even open their mouths to eat. If these pigs were like this, he would have a headache. Lear chuckled. Just feed them regular weeds, these pigs are not picky eaters. The anxiety in Bane's heart was instantly swept away, and his face showed great joy. Praise the goddess. This is so perfect. He turned around and looked at those 3-tailed pigs as if he were looking at his wife, salivating and excited. I will immediately arrange for someone to raise it. Lear waved his hand. There is no rush. You can go down and discuss it and designate an area for breeding. In the future, we will build a dedicated pig farm, and these 3-tailed pigs will become the strategic resources of Wailu City. After speaking, he reminded again. When selecting a pig farm, factors such as the feces, sewage, and odor produced by the 3-tailed pigs must be taken into consideration, and the farm should not be too close to the city of Dew. Once a pig farm becomes large-scale, the smell will definitely make people head over. On Earth, there are strict requirements for farms. The most basic one is to stay away from crowds. Yes, sir. After the topic was over, Lear looked up at the sky. Has the location for the Meyer wasps been chosen? Your Excellency Akania has decided on a location. 3 kilometers north of Up Pointing Arrow, there is a large tree more than 20 meters high where you can camp. At present, arrangements have been made for the wasps to move their nests. A single Meyer wasp is not a powerful being, but once it forms a large scale, few creatures in the swamp dare to actively offend them. Don't be afraid of danger at night. Lear nodded, said no more, waved the army to disperse, and handed the 3-tailed pig to Bane. The swamp hero was quite excited and took command in person. Calling the crowd to come to help, he drove 20 big fat pigs with a smile on his face that was brighter than a chrysanthemum. This is a treasure. With more people and strength, a temporary fence was quickly built at the edge of the territory. Wait until dawn tomorrow to find an area suitable for establishing a pig farm. Lear didn't interfere. Just as he was about to go back to the tent to rest, he suddenly noticed from the corner of his eye that the swamp banshees were looking at the excited and heated crowd with blurred eyes. They could vaguely feel a unique energy pouring into their bodies. This is. Immediately think of the other person's talent, using emotions as food. You can increase your own strength by swallowing your emotions. Immediately I became interested. I have been so busy these days that I have somewhat neglected the swamp banshee. These backbones of spiritual civilization construction cannot be wasted. Are you free to teach them some songs tomorrow? Or arrange a few operas? With the poor knowledge of this world, if you just play some sad drama, bloody drama, isn't it a crazy harvest of emotions? While thinking about it, ideas gradually came into my mind. But I've had a busy day today, and I'm physically and mentally exhausted. Tomorrow won't be too late. After returning to the tent, I washed myself briefly and lay down on the makeshift wooden bed. Listening to the lively sounds outside, my heart gradually calmed down. My thoughts began to spread, and I silently took stock of the results of this period of development. He has not been in the swamp for a long time, but so far, he has gradually accumulated a certain amount of knowledge. The military strength in hand currently includes 14 teams, 2-star potential, and level 7 wetland lizard warriors. More than 90,000 level 5 Meyer wasps. 12 level 9 swamp tree ants. In addition, there are vine fairy, bubble beast, and swamp banshee, which are not many in number, but all have strategic power. Compared to before, they are completely two concepts. In terms of heroes, there is Bane, the hero of life, who is currently the steward of Wailu City. Combat heroes, the level 11 two-headed ogre Chiefite who is still transforming, and the level 10 swamp queen in the same state, plus the level 7 wetland lizardman hero Hagath who he personally trained. But the most important thing is the flesh and blood slaughterer who is sleeping and transforming after merging with divinity. Once the opponent wakes up, it will give him an extra trump card. It can be said that the military power in his hands has increased more than 10 times compared to when he first stepped into the swamp. The development during this period has been fruitful. Lear felt much better. In terms of territory construction, a swampland with 1,000 acres of farmland is currently being reclaimed, which will ensure food in the future. And he owns a fish farm that is raising 2-star magic life dragon blood red fish. Today, we got another 3-tailed pig with an exaggerated growth rate, and we are about to build a pig farm. Progress was equally rapid. The territory's buildings were cultivated by the Vine Fairy, and the most important city hall has also taken shape. This giant building, which covers an area of more than 200 meters in diameter, has reached a height of 12 meters and is expected to be topped out in 3 to 5 days. This magnificent building will be completed by the end of this month at the latest. At that time, you will be free to build other buildings, residences, tailor shops, blacksmith shops, etc. Buildings can be arranged. After sorting out the development results, Lear felt a strong sense of accomplishment. The city of Wailu was truly built from scratch. The feeling is very subtle, like watching your child grow up day by day. After reviewing the whole situation, his thoughts became much clearer. There are several priorities for the next work. Externally, eliminating threats from all around. Up-pointing arrow. The Rotten Centaur 30 kilometers to the north, the Dark Naga learned from the half-fish population, has encountered the giant flesh and blood mosquito before and now knows the specific location. In addition, we have to explore the ancient ruins discovered by the half-murlocs, the demiplane mentioned by the two-headed ogre chief. At the same time, we must also pay close attention to the movements of the swamp authorities. Internally, the goal is to open up farmland as soon as possible and start cultivating food. At the same time, we will explore how to raise dragon blood red fish, and establish a pig farm to breed and increase the number of 3-tailed pigs. I still have a lot of things to do. After some deep thinking, the crowd outside gradually became quiet. Lear looked at the roof of the tent, silently thinking about the future of the city of Dew. As the helmsman, he must know exactly which direction the ship is going. And he must guide his crew firmly. As she was thinking, time ticked by, and silently passed into the early morning. August 15th. The moment the time on the panel jumped, the intelligence system suddenly displayed new information. The intelligence system has been cooled down and the intelligence can be refreshed. Do you want to refresh it? Lear was awakened and immediately sat up when he saw the prompt, his mood instantly rising. Eyes full of anticipation. It's finally here. Refresh. At the moment of confirmation, the information started to beat. 1. Dragon blood red fish is very picky and only eats fishtail grass. These aquatic plants grow deep in the mud of the pool where the dragon blood red fish is. 1 star. 2. At noon on August 17th, a group of wandering wetland lizardmen will pass by 20 kilometers west of left-pointing arrow. These wetland lizardmen hold the forbidden secret recipe for cultivating the lizardmen's unique military type, the cold-blooded cavalry. 2 stars. 3. Colorful moss is very suitable for feeding 3-tailed pigs. It grows next to the mud pool 2 kilometers north of the territory up-pointing arrow. As long as there is sufficient fertilizer, the growth rate of colorful moss will be greatly increased. 3 stars. 4. The lifespan of a bog wasp is 3 months, and the lifespan of a bog queen is 3 years. The mosquito queen can produce unique blood semen, which can be provided to the bog wasps and queens to extend their lives. 3 stars. 5. There is a ray of divinity in the hands of the Dark Naga, and feeding it to the flesh and blood slaughterer can increase its strength again. 4 stars, purple. After reading the updated information, Lear's breath couldn't help but his eyes became hot. There is only one thought in my mind. It's happening now. Each piece of this information is worth thousands of gold. And the most terrible thing is that the 5th article actually revealed 4-star intelligence. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.